subscribe. Subscribe to my guy, Uncle D. Tell him Big Bass sent you.
Spurling. I'm an attorney here in Houston, Texas, an advocate for black men, largely because I am a black man. I'm a black father, I have black sons. Hey man, I do what I do. Nevertheless, I'm really good at what I do. As I said, it is my day job. And so my telephone number is running across the bottom of the screen. If you've been involved in an accident, if you're injured, if your family members been injured, feel free to contact me at 1-713-229-0770 for a free consultation. That is 713-229-0770. Ask for Mr. Spurling, and you might just get me on the line if you got a good case. And if you got a bad case, I'm probably gonna send you a little letter to say we don't want it. Nevertheless, you have plenty of options. But that being the case, man, you guys make sure that you consider me, and I'm not begging you for anything. I'm really good at what I do as an attorney, and I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy helping people. I love fighting the good fight, and I've been doing it for a quarter century. And I'd appreciate it if you all would patronize my business. Hello, brothers and sisters. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are around the world. The title of this broadcast is Charlie Kirk, victim of white gang violence, leads to black colleges being under threat. I'll be honest with you, I hadn't originally planned to get involved in the conversation about Charlie Kirk. As you all know, I tend to stay in my lane and focus on our people and our issues. And his death, albeit tragic as it is, did not immediately strike me as an issue that directly involved black men and black women or black people in general. I saw him as another extremist voice, someone who made a career out of divisive rhetoric. And I had little interest in giving more energy to the man who had so little empathy for us. But in the days since his death, something disturbing has unfolded. HBCUs across the country have been receiving threats and going into lockdown. Alabama State University, Clark Atlanta University, Spelman right across the way, Bethune-Cookman University, Southern University, my alma mater, Hampton University, Virginia State University, institutions with no connection to Kirk's unalivement were suddenly targeted and their students forced into shelters and lockdowns. Black students, black families, black communities now live with heightened fear because of something we had nothing to do with. And that, sadly, is a story as old as America itself. White rage, to be specific. Anyone who studies Black American history knows the pattern. Whenever white men become frustrated, whenever white societies become unsettled or angry, they turn on black people, especially black men, as their kicking mule. And it doesn't matter if we had no involvement. It doesn't matter if the crisis was born out of white on white political gang violence, which is what this is. Black people are almost instinctively dragged into the line of fire, forced to pay the price for turmoil we didn't create. This is exactly what we see happening now. Charlie Kirk was killed in Utah, one of the whitest states in America, with only about 1.2% Black population. He was surrounded by white people speaking to white students in a place historically dominated by white culture. And the alleged shooter, a young white man, 22 years old, this is clearly a case of white on white violence. And yet in the aftermath, Black colleges are being terrorized, Black students on lockdown, and Black communities are once again forced to shoulder the consequences of a conflict that came from inside their house. And that's why I feel compelled to speak, not because Charlie Kirk himself was central to the lives of Black people, but because the ripple effects of his death have once again landed at our feet, and we must remain vigilant because history has shown us time and time again when white society lashes out in rage, it's Black people who often have to absorb the blow. Now, the truth is this. Most Black people don't even know who Charlie Kirk is. And for those who do, we don't think much of him. To us, he's just another angry, racist white man feeding the white masses the same old tired rhetoric they've been fed for 400 years. That Black people are inferior, that Black progress is illegitimate, that progressive, positive, uplifting Black voices are dangerous, and that Black humanity itself is negotiable. So Mr. Kirk was not unique. He was a part of a long tradition of white figureheads who built platforms by demonizing us, by pointing to our struggles as proof of our supposed inferiority. He dressed it up in talking points about DEI, affirmative action, law and order. But beneath the surface, it was the same recycled message Black America has heard since before slavery, during slavery, after slavery, and right up until now. And you don't belong here. You don't deserve equality, and you're the problem. So when news of his death spread, it didn't stir deep emotions in the Black community at large. There was no wave of grief, no outpouring of sorrow, because you can't spend years spitting on Black people and then expect Black people to shed tears when you fall. His name carried no love amongst the vast majority of us, only the memory of his hostility. Shout out to Frozen 06. But look, that's not to say that Black America is celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. We aren't. Okay, we are what we are is unmoved. Okay, we're indifferent, we're detached, and as the great American philosopher OG Two-Tone said in Straight Outta Compton in 2015, niggas die every day. And the truth is, we are largely desensitized to death, no matter how tragic. And so you must understand why. Embedded in the collective memory of foundational Black Americans are centuries of terror. We carry the images of our loved ones swinging from trees, their bodies left hanging for days and weeks as reminders of white power. Keep in mind, when they would hang people and torture people on those plantations, we were forced to walk past them. They wanted us to walk past them on our way to the fields to work from sunup to sundown. And this is not ancient history. And moving forward, if you want to leave slavery, because I know white America has a short memory, and anything that happened during slavery time might as well happen during the time of Abraham. But here's another one. Between 1882 and 1968, more than 4,700 documented lynchings occurred in the United States. And that's according to the NAACP. That's documented. We're not talking about the random lives taken by vigilantes and white mobs. And these These were not hidden crimes. They were public spectacles. They were broadcast in newspapers. You see? Embedded in our memory, too, is what came after emancipation during that time period, which was called the Jim Crow era. We remember the mutilated, burned, and decapitated bodies of our people. And I'm talking men, women, and children, entire families, unalive to enforce racial order. Crowds of white people traveled across the country and even they across the county and even state lines to witness these atrocities. They took photos, they printed postcards, and here's the other thing: they sold parts of the body as souvenirs. There was an infamous example, and it was the lynching of Jesse Washington in Waco, Texas, and this is May 15th, 1916. He was a young black teenager who was beaten. He had his manhood cutting off. He was burned alive, and his remains were dragged through the streets before thousands of cheering onlookers, men and women and children, who treated this as entertainment. Embedded in the memory of Black America are these things, and we can't ignore this grotesque reality that our bodies were not only brutalized, but they were also consumed. And when I say consumed, I mean eaten. There's a book, a groundbreaking book. It's called The Delectable Negro. It was written in 2014 by a man named Vincent Woodard. And he documented the literal consumption of Black flesh, whether through straight up cannibalism or even the harvesting of body parts as souvenirs, or the symbolic devouring of our bodies in the form of labor. See, they weren't only mutilated, they were cannibalized. And this happened during slavery, when black bodies were a delicacy. But more importantly, during these very same lynchings, accounts describe white mobs cutting off fingers, ears, and other parts of these Black American lynch victims. And they kept them as trophies. They even ate the flesh. It was a grotesque ritual of domination. And see, here's the thing is, this is not fringe behavior. This was the culture of white supremacy in practice: brutal, inhumane, and proudly public. And this practice of physically consuming Black bodies, it may have diminished after the 20th century, but the symbolic consumption continued. There are still people with lynching photographs that have become postcards, charred fingers and bones. Yale University just returned a woman's skull that was used to drink from in the faculty office. In fact, they didn't even return it. They just put it in a room that nobody has access to. Imagine the psychological message that was sent to us. That the Black body exists for use, to satisfy a sick appetite for domination. And this is one of the reasons why Black people moved out of the South. This is why they moved north. This is why they moved west. This is why they moved to the Midwest during the Great Migration of the early 20th century. Because they were looking for a reprieve from that overt spectacle and this level of violence. They moved to cities like Detroit and Chicago and Cleveland and Los Angeles. And those places became havens where Black people could at least attempt to build new lives away from the ever-present terror of these lynch mobs and this white anti-Black racism. But even there, racism adapted. It showed up in the form of redlining and job discrimination and segregation. The consumption of Black bodies shifted forms, but it didn't vanish. So, again, When we say we feel no empathy for Charlie Kirk, it's not because we're heartless. It is because we know the heartache more intimately than almost any other group of people on this soil. We are the descendants of those who lived through centuries of ritualized death and terror and dehumanization. We cannot be expected to shed tears for a man whose life work was dedicated to denying our dignity, when for generations no one shed tears for ours. As far as Charlie Kirk and the men like him, we've learned through the centuries of experience that we owe no emotional investment to men who made it their mission to deny our dignity. Now, again, as I said earlier, most Black people don't even know who Charlie Kirk is. Okay? They didn't. Now, for those of us who did know who he was, for most people, Black Americans had a complicated relationship with him and people like him. On one hand, we recognize him for what he was, an extremist whose words carried no love for us, only suspicion and hostility. But on the other hand, we also understood the impact of his platform. His words shaped minds, it hardened hearts, and it gave fuel to those who already doubted our worth. And so while he never spoke to us with compassion, his voice still reached into our lives, often in destructive ways. That's why his death doesn't necessarily stir much empathy and feelings amongst us. It doesn't inspire grief or sympathy because you can't spend years undermining people and then expect tears when you fall. At most, what Black America feels is detachment and an acknowledgement of the tragedy of the loss of his life, mixed with the unshakable memory of the harm he caused. So, this is complicated. It's a complicated moment for Black America. You see, you got the very same people who spent years dismissing our struggles, undermining our victories, and arguing that laws protecting our humanity were unnecessary. And now he's suddenly become the headlines and a victim of violence that he helped legitimize. That's the dilemma that Black America is staring at in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's death. On one hand, death, especially violent death, is always a tragedy. It forces us to pause and reflect and reckon with the fragility of human life. It reminds us that behind every headline is a family, a spouse, and children and loved ones who are grieving. And no amount of political disagreement can erase the very real human suffering that his family is going through. But on the other hand, the complexity of this moment lies in the undeniable fact that Charlie Kirk wasn't just some random bystander caught in a storm. He was one of the architects of the very storm that claimed him. For years, he built his platform on narratives that painted Black progress as illegitimate, civil rights as an error in judgment, and diversity as a threat to America's greatness. His words weren't abstract ideas tossed in the ether. They were instructions, frameworks, and battle cries for an audience primed to see us as the descendants of those once denied basic freedoms as enemies of the nation. So now, when news of his untimely demise hits the timelines, we're caught in an emotional bind. We're told to respond with unfiltered empathy for a man that said empathy was a new age invention and made us weak. That's what he said. Nevertheless, they're asking that his years of hostility towards our existence should be wiped clean the moment his life is ended. But that's not how memory works for Black America. We carry history in our bones. We carry the sting of every dismissal, every insult, every policy argument designed to shrink our opportunities. And when someone who spent their career trying to delegitimize our humanity becomes a victim of the climate they cultivated, it's impossible to just feel one thing. It's sorrow mixed with anger. It's compassion entangled with a painful sense of irony. It's the recognition that violence is never the answer, while also acknowledging that the words that we use have consequences. And Kirk's words shaped a world where extremism felt normal, where violence felt justified, where hate has become political currency. That's why this moment feels so complicated for Black America, because we're not just not mourning the man. We're reckoning with the contradiction of condemning the violence that took him while refusing to forget the violence, emotional, psychological, and political harm that he inflicted on us. It's not simple. It's not clean. It's layered. It's messy. It is deeply human. Let me make this plain. While you have the privilege of life, understand that you are writing your own eulogy. Every word you speak, every action you take, every way you treat people, that's what people remember. That's the story they'll tell about you when you're gone. None of us can escape the angel of death. None of us get to edit our eulogy once it's written. You don't get to come back and say, oh, but remember when I did this one good thing. No. Your life as you lived it is the only draft that counts. If you spend your years doing good and lifting people up and spreading love and working for the betterment of humanity, you'll likely be remembered with respect, maybe even reverence. But if you spend your life spewing vitriol, hate, and racism and misogyny and bigotry, and let's be real, if you build your name as a grifter, then don't be surprised when the world remembers you for exactly that. Charlie Kirk's entire career was built on rage baiting for profit. He wasn't provocative. Shout out to Dre Harden. The man wasn't provocative by an accident. He chose to be deliberately cruel and deliberately divisive because outrage meant clicks and clicks meant money. He targeted and demeaned people who had families and children and loved ones, people just as human as his own wife and kids. He dehumanized others for sport. And now in death, people are under no obligation to humanize him more than he ever humanized them. You don't get to rewrite your legacy after the fact. You don't get to ask for grace when you never gave grace. Once you're gone, and the memory of your life is the only thing left behind. So when you see the detachment or lack of empathy, the blunt criticism isn't random. It's a direct response to the choices he made while alive. The truth is simple. Charlie Kirk wrote his own eulogy. See, here's the thing. When someone dies, especially through violence, society leans on an unspoken rule. We're supposed to soften our memory of them. We're told to set aside the damage they cause, to mute the critiques, and to focus only on the tragedy of their passing. Shout out to Dre Harden. And see, it's almost as if death itself wipes the slate clean, rewriting your legacy in real time. But Black folks don't have that privilege of practicing that kind of selective memory. We don't get to hit the erase button just because the person who harmed us is no longer alive. History doesn't reset for us. Trauma doesn't dissolve on command. We remember. We remember the words that were spoken against us, the policies pushed that diminished us, and the platform used to paint us and our success as fraudulent. Charlie Kirk gave us plenty to remember. His public career wasn't marked with neutrality or fairness. It was marked by consistent, deliberate attacks on the very system meant to protect Black dignity and advancement. For us, ignoring history would be dishonest. Pretending those wounds never existed just because the man who inflicted them is gone would be betrayal of our lived reality. And that's the tension that we're sitting in right now. And while others may insist that death demands silence or deference, Black America knows better. Remembrance is part of our survival. And to forget is to invite the same harms all over again. So when the world asks us to mourn without reflection, it's not just unfair, it's impossible. Now, let me be crystal clear from the start. Political violence is wrong. Nobody, no matter how controversial, no matter how offensive their rhetoric, no matter how harmful their politics, deserves to die for what they believe. And the moment we normalize that idea that death is an acceptable consequence for holding unpopular or damaging opinions, we've crossed into dangerous territory that undermines the very principles of justice and democracy we proclaim to protect. Shout out to G-Town Skittles. What happened at Utah Valley University is a tragedy. The loss of life through violence always is. Beyond the headlines, beyond the political noise, there are very real people left behind who didn't sign up for this. His wife, his children, his family, his friends, who must now carry the unbearable weight of grief. Their pain deserves acknowledgement, and our humanity requires that we say that out loud and say it first before anything. And this disclaimer is not just about decency, it's about drawing a moral boundary that cannot be blurred. To criticize Charlie Kirk's legacy is one thing. To criticize his arguments and his philosophy and the things he said, that's one thing. But to condone the violence that ended his life, that's a whole nother thing, and it's out of bounds. And while many of us carry complicated feelings about who he is and who he was and what he represented, we must hold firm to this truth. Political violence cannot be the answer. If we allow it to become the norm, then none of us are safe, because today's target could be tomorrow's neighbor, leader, or even ourselves. Now, when we talk about political violence in America, we can't ignore the long, bloody history of how it has been weaponized against our Black leaders, whose only demand was equality. The truth is, political violence is not new to us. It has been part of our reality for generations. Take Medgar Evers, for instance. On June 12, 1963, he was gunned down in his own driveway, shot in the back of the head in front of his wife and his children by a white supremacist named Byron de la Beckwith. Medgar Evers had dedicated his life to fighting for voting rights and for dignity of Black Americans. Yet justice for his murder took decades, and that was just an insult added to injury for his death. And then, of course, we have Brother Malcolm X. On February 21st, 1965, Brother Malcolm was assassinated in Harlem, shot 21 times in front of his supporters. And his death was not the work of one lone gunman, but the result of coordinated effort that involved COINTELPRO and the FBI. And if you guys, that was a notorious counterintelligence program, and they worked alongside the NYPD. Malcolm left behind a wife and young children that he would never see grow up. His life was cut short for daring to call for Black self-determination and equality. And then, of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. On April 4th, 1968, he was assassinated on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Like Evers and Brother Malcolm, King left behind a wife and children also. They had to live with the shadow of his absence. And Brother King preached nonviolence. Yet he was still killed in a very violent way by another white man named James Earl Ray, pulling the trigger while the larger government forces looked the other way. And some say maybe conspired. And then there's Fred Hampton, since we're talking about political violence. He died on December 4th, 1969. He was 21 years old. Hampton was murdered in his sleep by the Chicago Police Department in a raid orchestrated by the FBI and the COINTELPRO. He was shot repeatedly in his bed as his pregnant fiance lay beside him. Hampton was fighting for poor people, for working people, for Black people. His crime was building solidarity across racial and class lines. And for that, he was executed by the state. So political violence is stitched into America's history just as tightly as guns are themselves. And yet, notice the contrast. When these men, Black men fighting for equality, not hate, were assassinated, the nation they didn't lower their flags to half-mast. The media didn't call their deaths a tragedy worthy of universal grief. They didn't ask white people to cry about it. In fact, they celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King's death. Look at the polls. They celebrated. In fact, their movements were criminalized. Their legacies were distorted. Their children were left fatherless. There was no national empathy. Now look at today. Shout out to Dre Harden. Charlie Kirk, he dies a horrible, violent death, and instantly the machinery of public mourning goes into overdrive. Flags get lowered, tributes pouring in, his name cast as a martyr. But when Black leaders were slaughtered for daring to imagine a world without racism, without hate, there was no national consensus that their lives matter, no collective recognition of their deaths as tragedies. And that's why this moment feels so complicated for Black America, because once again, we are reminded that this country chooses who is worthy of public grief and who is not. The same society that shrugged when bullets took our leaders is now uniting to mourn a man who spent his life opposing the very rights those leaders died fighting for. So yes, Charlie Kirk's death is a tragedy, but so were the deaths of Medgar Evers, Brother Malcolm X, Brother Dr. Martin Luther King, and Brother Fred Hampton. The difference is that when they were killed, America did not stop to mourn with us. America did not shame or try to guilt white America into mourning for those Black men. And the contrast tells you everything about the hierarchy of empathy in this country. But now that we've established the foundation that political violence is wrong and that Kirk's death is a tragedy, we also have to be honest about the other side of this story, because the truth is Charlie Kirk's relationship with Black America wasn't neutral. It wasn't friendly, and it certainly wasn't supportive. Pretending otherwise would not just be dishonest, it would be disrespectful to the lived experiences of millions of us who heard, absorbed, and endured his rhetoric over the years. For those who might not know the full scope of what we're dealing with, let me walk you through some of Charlie Kirk's greatest hits. When it came to us, this is not a man who simply disagreed with certain policies. This was someone who used his platform, his influence, and his movement to actively undermine Black dignity, Black advancement, and Black humanity. He wasn't just on the sidelines on racial politics. He was on the front lines, shaping narratives that position us as the undeserving beneficiaries of set-aside programs. This man made a career out of weaponizing resentment, and particularly against diversity, equity, and inclusion. He didn't just critique these policies, he branded them as proof that Black achievement was all around illegitimate. That wasn't a casual opinion. It was a systematic campaign that told his millions and millions of followers to view our success not as earned, but as handed to us at their expense. And that kind of messaging doesn't just live online. It trickles into the classrooms, into the boardrooms, into the courtrooms, and workplaces where real Black people have to pay the price of being viewed as less competent and less deserving and less human. And that's just one example. Because see, over and over again, Kirk found ways to use his influence to chip away at the foundation of Black America's struggle for equality. He attacked our icons. He twisted our history. And called into question the very laws that made it possible for us to even be in the certain rooms. And this relationship with us wasn't complicated, it was hostile. And what makes this moment complicated is that his death forces us to wrestle with grief for the loss of human life on one hand, and remembrance of a long record of harm on the other. This man built his brand by turning diversity, equity, and inclusion into dirty words. To him, DEI wasn't about leveling the playing field. After centuries of exclusion, it was proof, he argued, that America was discriminating against white people. He repeated the message everywhere, on college campuses, on social media, at conservative conferences, and in front of millions of followers. And make no mistake, he wasn't simply debating policy differences. He was waging an assault on the very legitimacy of Black achievement. For years, Mr. Kirk insisted the DEI programs lowered standards, that Black professional students and leaders who advanced through these initiatives weren't truly qualified. What he implied and what his audience heard was that any Black person in position of influence had gotten there unfairly, through charity or through favoritism, rather than talent and hard work. That narrative wasn't abstract, it was corrosive. It seeped into workplaces where Black employees had to fight the unspoken assumption that they were diversity hires. It seeped into universities where Black students were viewed as beneficiaries of lowered bars rather than equals who had earned their place. It seeped into politics, law, corporate America, creating an atmosphere where our excellence was constantly under suspicion. Shout out to Dre Harden. Think about what that does to a community. Imagine working twice as hard, achieving, in spite of systematic barriers, and still having your accomplishment dismissed as illegitimate because someone like Charlie Kirk has convinced millions of people that you didn't belong. That's not just a policy disagreement. It's psychological warfare. It's stripping away of dignity. It's telling an entire people that their victories are fraudulent, their progress is undeserved, and their presence is in historically white spaces is a mistake. This was the foundation of Kirk's relationship with Black America. He wasn't merely opposed to certain programs. He was opposed to the idea that Black people could rise without being viewed as threats or tokens. His crusade against DEI was never about fairness. It was about gatekeeping. It's about keeping doors of opportunity cracked just enough to let a few in, while convincing the rest of the country that the whole idea of equality was dangerous. Look, the man went after Dr. Martin Luther King. This is one of the most universally respected figures in American civil rights history, and perhaps the world. And he argued that Dr. King would have opposed modern civil rights movements and weaponized a sanitized version of King's message to undermine contemporary Black activism. He stripped away the radical critique of racism and poverty and militarism that Dr. King actually stood for, leaving only a hollow, colorblind soundbite that could be used against us. This wasn't a debate. It was purely psychological manipulation. It was gaslighting at an institutional level. And let's be clear, this wasn't new. It's one of the oldest tricks in the racist playbook. They'll dig up the legacies of one of our dead Black leaders, okay? If they're not being disparaged outright, their words are then cherry-picked and watered down and then wielded against the modern Black leadership. And the message is always the same. Why can't you be more like them? As if those leaders from the past, if they weren't alive today, they would be fully briefed on the current conditions and would clearly understand and endorse and adapt to the tactics of this generation. What he was doing was a rhetorical sleight of hand designed to divide us across time, to pit the memory of our ancestors against the struggles of their descendants. And Charlie Kirk was a master of this tactic. By invoking Dr. King in this distorted way, he not only disrespected the reality of King's activism, but he also sought to delegitimize every Black movement that dared to demand justice in the present. Here's another one, and this is even worse. This man made a statement that many Black folk considered the final straw. Charlie Kirk suggested out loud in one of his rants that America made a mistake by passing the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I want you to think about the weight of that claim. All the women who are listening, all the other people of color who are listening, Black, brown, Asian, all of y'all. The Civil Rights Act outlawed racial discrimination in public accommodations, employment, housing, and education. It was the legal foundation that finally struck down Jim Crow segregation. And so for Charlie Kirk to call that a mistake, that wasn't ambiguity. It was a direct rejection of our basic humanity. That includes women, which means white women, Black women, Asian women, brown women, Latino women. It includes every minority that's sitting here right now today. This man had the nerve to say that Black people were better off under Jim Crow. Yes, he literally said that we were better off during the time when lynchings were routine, when Black women were raped without recourse, when the courts declared openly that Black man had no rights, which a white man is bound to respect. That wasn't a figure of speech. That was the law of the land as laid down by Dred Scott v. Sanford and enforced in a practice across the South for generations. That's what America's Kirk, that's what we're romancing. That's what America wants us to romance. So to understand the magnitude of Charlie Kirk's claim that Black people were better off under Jim Crow, you've got to grasp what life was actually like before the Civil Rights Act. Not the sanitized version that they teach you during Black History Month, but the daily reality of deprivation, exclusion, and second and third class citizenship. See, under Jim Crow, Black folks in the rural South were routinely denied the right to even purchase certain goods. Many of the small general stores, often owned by local white men who employed the Black sharecroppers, who were probably also the owners of the damn fields and plantations, they would either refuse to extend credit, they would impose these high prices if they sold you something on credit, Shout out to Miss Mimi Amini Faith. Or sell only the lowest quality merchandise or the broken stuff to black people. Some of the goods were simply off limits. If Miss Ann got this nice dress, you couldn't get it. Wasn't for sale for white folk. Just white folk only. You had to wait till white folks got served before you got served, and your money was as green as theirs. And if black people tried to open a marketplace of their own, oftentimes they would burn those down. It could be met with violence or vandalism or worse. You get drove out of town. And the only thing that saves us was a company called Sears and Roebuck. Many of you young people might remember it's called Sears for y'all. And they had a mail order catalog. And unlike the local stores, Sears sold by mail. It was the Amazon of the time. They offered credit. And they would ship directly to rural homes, whether we're talking about Mississippi, Alabama, or Arkansas. And what that meant was that black families could buy clothing, farming tools, they could buy furniture, even prefabricated homes. All you had to do was put it together. And they can do it without facing humiliation and face-to-face discrimination. They didn't have to beg or defer or accept lower quality items. The Sears catalog allowed a sort of anonymous purchasing that Jim Crow didn't allow. Being a paying customer without having your dignity trampled on just because of the color of your skin. And that's why black people love Sears so much. Ask your grandma, ask your great grandma. It's true. The white folks started a rumor that Sears was owned by black people, so much so that Sears, the owners had to put their face in the magazine. Now, I'm not saying they weren't racist and bigoted, and that's the insidiousness of racism. They turn on each other. But again, Charlie Kirk once said that black people were better off during that time, before we got civil rights. And now he's gone. And we're left to set the record straight. Again, the statement isn't just wrong. It's ignorant and it's dangerous. But unfortunately, there are people who are listening to that. It's an insult to the history of what our ancestors had to deal with being black people in this country. Before the civil rights, black people lived under open terror. Not only could we be lynched for looking the wrong way at a white person and jailed and put in chain gangs and forced to work for a lifetime or until we died. And even those of us who had success and we bought land and we built something lasting for our children, angry white people found ways to destroy it. Black prosperity itself was treated as a crime. Take Forsyth County, Georgia, 1912. More than 1,000 black men and women and children, landowners, farmers, and business people were run out of town after false accusations. Their homes were torched. They would leave a box of sticks on the front porch of a black man's house, bundled up. And what that meant was, if you are here, when we come back, this is going to be dynamite. So what did black people have to do? They literally had to leave the county and leave the town and leave all their worldly possessions and move somewhere else. And then the next thing you know, some white folk came on and moved in the very same house that the black people had. This is how black people's farms were stolen. This is Forsyth County, Georgia, 1912. The paperwork is still on the books. And then they took the white folks staying there long enough, you can take it by adverse possession. That's the law. Their businesses were seized by white neighbors. Their homes were seized. All they wanted to do was build. Entire families were left homeless. They had to get out of town carrying nothing on their backs but the clothes they had. Shout out to Dre Harden. And the land was folded into white estates. To this day, their descendants have never recovered. And you telling us we can't have reparations. And look, Forsyth County, Georgia wasn't the only one. There's a place in Florida, I don't know how to properly pronounce his name. Somebody said I wasn't alive during that time. My grandmother was, my grandfather was. So where's my inheritance? The name is pronounced Ocoee, Florida. I think it's called, I don't want to butcher the name. But 1920, they massacred black people for daring to vote. They burned their houses down. They burned their farms down. They took their land the same way. The whole community was erased. They did the same thing. You got white people living on that land right now who are the descendants of the people who stole it from the black people by force after they spent their time and money and earning it and building it. Keep in mind, Charlie Kirk said before 1965, black people were better off. This is what this man has convinced all you folks to believe. What about Elaine, Arkansas in 1919? You had black folk who tried to unionize and organize to get fair pay. They were literally slaughtered by white mobs and soldiers. And the black folks who survived, they had to flee. They had to abandon their land. And that land was stolen by white folks and white land. These were not isolated incidents across the South and the Midwest. Dozens of thriving black communities were wiped off the map because white America could not stand black success. So when you have somebody like Charlie Kirk claiming that we as black people were better off before civil rights in 1965, ask yourself, better off by what measure? Better off when we could be unalive for voting? Better off when our land was stolen and our children were left homeless? Better off when the wealth we built was handed over to white folks who still benefit from it today? Better off when 60% of us live below the poverty line? Shout out to Johnny Harris. Civil rights didn't make us worse. Civil rights is where was a partial correction to the generations of theft and terror that we had to deal with. Even then, they didn't restore the land and the homes or the businesses stripped away from us in the Civil Rights Act. They didn't replace the lives lost. They didn't compensate us for all the people whose land is. Some of you all listening to this right now, if you go deep enough in your history, you will see that your home, your land, family members had land in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, and they had to abandon it because white folk had a fit. And nobody is going to undo the generational advantage that white families gained by stealing black wealth. So when Charlie Kirk says that we were better off before the Civil Rights Bill, the truth is simple. We were not better off, sir, than any of his other folk that listened to it under Jim Crow. We were surviving and resisting and building in spite of it until mobs and laws and violence came to strip it away. Charlie Kirk wasn't speaking the truth. He was recycling the same old racist lie and rhetoric that black people are somehow better off oppressed and better off robbed and better off without dignity or rights than we are with them. History says different. And the graves, the burned homes, and the stolen farms, they all say different also. And that's why his words will never stand as fact. They will stand only as proof of his ignorance and of the ignorance of those who follow it. So look, we weren't better off before civil rights, when our dignity could be robbed from us. We couldn't even buy the same goods as our white neighbors. By what metric? By what metric? And this is why we don't want people like that to pass away. We want to debate them. Because my question would have been to him is, by what metric were we better off, Mr. Kirk? We had less rights, less dignity, and less equal access before the 1960s. Hell, 2/3 of black people lived in poverty before the 1960s. Literacy was suppressed. Voting rights were suppressed. Justice was denied. Shout out to Johnny Harris. Under those conditions, Sears wasn't a bomb. It was a rare escape hatch. Calling life better is not just an inaccuracy. It is a dismissal of countless lives lived under oppression. By what metric? Before the 1960s, was 2/3 of black people in the country lived in like people in third world countries. We were systematically excluded from schools, jobs, neighborhoods. Generations were trapped in poverty, not by choice, but by design. So when you have this man and people like him who say we were better off doing Jim Crow, which is what that time period is commonly called, who is he really saying this to? And what is he really saying? He's saying we're better off poor, powerless, and without rights. Shout out to Alonzo Dunn. That's the world that many of these folk are longing for. Where white supremacy and white folk and white men in particular can just run roughshod over everybody and go unchallenged. And black humanity is officially denied. And that's why this moment feels so raw, because it's not just about Kirk's opinion on legislation. It's about a man with a massive platform declaring that our freedom and our dignity and our very right to exist as equals under the law were mistakes. And that's not conservative policy debate. That's just ideological violence. That's just raw racism. And it's the clearest window into how hostile his relationship with Black America truly was. Now that I've gotten through with that long opening statement, black folks are not the only one that have mixed messaging about this man. Shout out to Flowers Galore. White folks have a lot to say about Charlie Kirk. Don't just blame black people. I want you to hear what the white people have to say about Charlie Kirk. Listen to what he has to say, what they have to say.
Happy goodbye.
Wow. Did you see that Charlie Kirk just got shot and killed?
That's good.
Wow.
You hear what these people are saying? These are white people saying this about this man.
That's good. That's good that people are getting shot just off a political view. Good that people are dying in America.
Did you see that Charlie Kirk got shot and killed today?
Yes, I did.
How do you feel about that?
I don't really have any feelings about it. Who are you?
Charlie Kirk got shot.
These are your own white people saying this stuff about this man. These are white people talking about this man. Listen to what the white people are saying about this man. White people can't even come to a consensus on how they feel about this man. And you expect black folks who he spent a lifetime talking bad about to just have a consensus? Keep listening to what these folk are saying.
Shot and killed today. We're just getting people's opinions. How do you feel about that?
Girl, someone had to do it. And that's how I feel at this point in time. But
Yeah, I appreciate your honesty. I truly do. So you said someone had to do it.
yes. Try not to get all pulled up into that, but he was a misogynist. He was a disgusting person with disgusting beliefs.
So if you had a magical wand, a magical button that you could press and keep him from being assassinated, would you press that?
No. I think things happen for a purpose. And if that's how his life was ended, then that's how it was ended. So.
Charlie Kirk got exactly what he had been advocating for. I'm not endorsing it. I'm not condoning it. He got exactly what he had been advocating for.
Personally, I will never celebrate somebody being murdered, but that doesn't mean that I have to have sympathy either. Charlie Kirk is going to have a legacy, but it's going to be a bad legacy to a lot of us. And he will be remembered by all of the hateful and racist rhetoric that he spread while he was alive. And it's crazy that Laura Loomer really got on X to say that she's going to ruin the livelihoods of anyone that is celebrating or happy that Charlie Kirk died. But yet there was the same fucking woman that got on X a few months ago saying things like, feeding illegals to the Gators.
Excuse the language, but you know, these people are passionate about this subject matter.
We need more of that energy. The alligators have 65 million meals guaranteed if we start now. So you can promote and encourage the death of 65 million fucking Latinos. But Charlie Kirk is where we draw the line. You guys are fucking delusional. It's crazy to say that Dems are the fucking problem when the majority of mass shootings in this country have been far-right, white Christian nationalists. Yes. But one person shoots Charlie Kirk and all of a sudden we have a Dem problem? Like really, what is the experience to be this fucking delusional?
If you were loudly grieving Charlie Kirk today, but you were radio silent when Melissa Hortman and her husband were violently attacked and killed in their home, and John Hoffman were shot because they were politicians. If you do not post on Facebook about all of these mass shootings that are killing our children, and you are not posting or talking about the thousands of children and women and men who are losing their lives in Gaza for a genocide that we pay for with our tax dollars. If you are openly grieving him today, but you have been radio silent about those things, I do not want to hear a word from you. Your empathy is performative at best. Every human being matters. So until you start acting like it, I would stop opening your mouth and talking.
Does America think we're this stupid now? Like they're gonna expect us to believe that some college kid was able to do a kill shot right in the artery of Charlie Kirk's neck? Come on, guys. It's time to wake up.
All these white people on TikTok crying over a snake like Charlie Kirk.
Now, she talking about white people. She looks pretty white to me, but nevertheless, these are white people talking about Charlie Kirk.
Dying. Why? When you put out hate in the world, it comes back at you. Why are you crying? Do you know that 15% of the population of the world is white? The other 85% of the rest of the goddamn world is not white.
Okay, I promised my viewers that I will not interrupt when the videos are being played. However, I feel the need to correct that particular statistic. I will go back to remaining quiet because I know you all have told me not to speak during the videos, and I'm going to oblige by that, but some stuff needs to be addressed. Now, 7% of the world population is white, or what we would classify themselves as white. So it's not 15%, it's 7. So they're a very tiny percentage of the world. But I'm going to let this I'm gonna let this lady speak. I don't know if she's white or whatever, but she looks white to me. But never mind.
However, you white people over the centuries have murdered millions of people. Why are you upset about this devil's spawn? Why? You all killed each other all over Europe. Right now, 2 white nations are fighting against each other. And the white nation of Israel, supposedly, is looking to eliminate 2 million people in Gaza. For 15% of the world population, you certainly and without a doubt have caused nothing but strife in almost every goddamn country in the world except Japan, because you didn't invade it. So shut the fuck up. We don't care. Utah is 89% white. Why hasn't Trump sent the National Guard for this white-on-white crimes? And as for Utah, that's another cult state. This man made up a religion so that he could essay young girls. So fuck off.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational.
All right, let me try and explain something to you. The world is trying to change and ascend into a intuition and loved base way of being. When that happens and we start talking things out loud, that's how manifestation occurs. So when you are speaking about subjects like this, it's not one rule for everybody else, but you're exempt. If you have a true belief like this and you're willing to state it, unfortunately for him, for his wife and his children, there are consequences. We can call it karmic retribution, and that is going to happen to every single person, whether that is in this lifetime or your next. It is the way the universe works, through balance. We must experience everything. We experience what we put onto others, and we experience what others put onto us. In a world that is evolving and ever-changing, choose your words carefully. Choose your beliefs. Question where such hateful, dominant energy is coming from. And where is it going to get you? Where is that leading you and the rest of the world? Be careful of your words, as our world is ascending into instant manifestation times.
So many of you Charlie Kirk fans are so mad at me right now. So this is what I'm going to do for you, okay? I'm going to play a clip of Charlie, and I'm going to grant him his wish to fulfill his legacy, to give you exactly what you're looking for of Charlie Kirk, this great white man that you all put on a fucking pedestal. You ready?
In fact, I even think that we should bring back, public execution.
I guess the racist piece of shit got what he wanted.
All right, so I have seen.
Just a reminder to my audience, I've yet to hear any black people say anything this harsh about this man. These are white people talking about Charlie Kirk, not me, not us. And the only reason I've even involved myself in this conversation is because the threat that went out against our historically black colleges, which means that black lives are in danger because of something we had absolutely nothing to do with. But let's go ahead and let these folk commence to finish speaking.
In the video multiple times from various angles, and yeah, I gotta say he does look better in red, but that's not what I want to talk about. Okay, of course, naturally there's going to be the virtue signaling coming in from really both sides, mostly the right, but yeah. But yeah, and they're gonna be saying shit like, "Oh, he was a husband and father. It's not right to be like cheering someone's death." And I'm just like, look, this man said he hated empathy. Okay, I'm just respecting his wishes, but honestly, empathy.
He truly did. Charlie Kirk's Kirk truly did say he hated empathy, but
he has his limits. Okay, and quite frankly, like MAGA as a whole has just completely exhausted my empathy. I got nothing for y'all. Like, not even the concept of. And no, I don't condone violence, but it could not have happened to a better person.
Oh my God.
You know? And as for his wife and daughters, you know what? His wife is young enough to remarry. She'll be fine, you know? And his daughters, considering the shit that he's been saying about women, I'd say they're better off. I don't even think that condolences are really fitting here. I'd say congratulations are in order. I mean, like, literally nothing of value was lost. But there is a lesson to be learned here, okay? And the moral of the story is don't be a piece of shit. And maybe, just maybe, people won't feel as inclined to shoot you in the neck and have you bleeding out like a water faucet. Just saying. Bottom line, he was a waste of carbon, and the world is now a more beautiful place now that he has left it.
I don't feel sympathy for Charlie.
Family, I need you to understand. Did you hear what that white man just said? All you white folks who are looking to black people for empathy for this man said, why don't you talk to your own people and ask them why they don't have any empathy? Because that's who he fought so hard for. You want black people who this man spent his lifetime attempting to undermine our success and our well-being. You want us to show him empathy, and his own people who he fought for aren't? I want you to think about that. The sheer remitting gall that you have to ask us and your own people. All these are white people talking bad about this man. And you got the nerve to want to lash out against black people who had absolutely nothing to do with this? Keep listening.
I just don't. I don't feel sympathy for anyone who happily uses their large platform and influence to manufacture consent for the genocide in Gaza. One bullet hit that man, 355 hit Hijacking, and Charlie Kirk still defended Israel. When Palestinians were being torn apart in the hundreds by bullets trying to get a bag of flour for their family after being forcibly starved to the point of desperation, Charlie Kirk still defended Israel. There was a time when he said that there was no such thing as a Palestinian at all. So no, I don't feel sympathy for this. I just don't.
Wait, sorry, are people actually feeling sorry for Charlie Kirk, the guy who made a career out of despising anyone that wasn't straight, white and male and encouraging other people to do what he was doing? I mean, look, feel free to feel empathy for him, but this is what the guy you're mourning thought about that.
I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage, but...
You know what else does damage, Charlie? No, we shouldn't go there. I mean, that being said, this is what Charlie said about people who lose their lives to...
I want you to understand, did you hear what Charlie Kirk himself said about empathy? Listen to what he said about empathy. They want us to feel empathy for a man who had these views on empathy. Listen to it again. That might have gone too fast.
And encouraging other people to do what he was doing. I mean, look, feel free to feel empathy for him, but this is what the guy you're mourning thought about that.
I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage, but...
You know what?
I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage. This is what this gentleman said, okay? And this is what white folks are saying about this man. So whatever he meant to say, or whatever the context was of what he said, this is what his own people who he fought and defended and, you know, was trying to push for white nation. This is what white people thought about Charlie Kirk.
What else does damage, Charlie? No, we shouldn't go there. I mean, that being said, this is what Charlie said about people who lose their lives to guns in America.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal.
Yeah, that one worked out for him, didn't it? Look, spare us the faux sympathy and outrage that people aren't feeling remorseful that Charlie Kirk is no longer alive. He was evil. Charlie Kirk was pure evil. And the world is a better place without people like Charlie Kirk in it. And you can boo me for saying that. But deep down, you know that I'm right.
Well, there you go. This is what white people say.
The death of Charlie Kirk is a tragedy. It was murder, and it happened in front of his children. But Charlie Kirk was a political extremist and an agitator. who profited from division, not inspiration. His ministry was a cancerous one, and it was aimed at killing the American Republic. Charlie Kirk deserved to be debated and condemned, not shot. And Charlie Kirk was 31. Maybe Charlie Kirk, at a 40-year-old man, would have abandoned the dark path he was on.
And I think that is the greatest tragedy, because irrespective of what you think about Charlie Kirk in his current state, he was an intelligent man. And the thing I like about intelligent people and people who attempt to learn is that they can change over time. And we're going to talk about some issues or some incidents, some individuals who did make a change. Some did make a change, but they still were beneficial to all people. And I'm going to talk about that because I think that's the greatest tragedy. Now, I'm not going to give much credit to a lot of his followers who just blindly followed him, but Charlie Kirk was an intelligent man, and he should be here to debate. We do want people like that to debate because it sharpens your skills. Iron sharpens iron, but we're going to let this gentleman finish.
Chance of that was stolen. But Charlie Kirk did not serve his country. Charlie Kirk did not serve the American flag, and it is inappropriate for it to be lowered to half-staff above the White House. Charlie Kirk served the MAGA flag.
Yeah. All right. So again, as I said, Charlie Kirk, he's gone, and we don't have the opportunity to debate him. But there were instances where people did debate him. There were instances where he was confronted in political discourse, and he was shut down. Okay, and that is how we deal with things in the civilized world. I'm going to actually show you a video, and I believe he was over in the UK at the time, and he got dealt with. Okay, he had to deal with some people who didn't back down for him. But until we get to that point, what I want to do is first show you some of the things this man actually said. Here's something he said about Juneteenth.
What exactly is going on here? Well, very few people are willing to actually call this out. From the first time that this was floated as a Juneteenth. What exactly is going on here? Well, very few people are willing to actually call this out. From the first time that this was floated as a federal holiday, I am thankful and proud to say on this program we opposed it. This is not about out of many one. No, it's about a certain skin color now gets their own summertime celebration, the exact same.
You hear this man? Shout out to I can't say the name. So you're mad because black people get to celebrate in the summertime. I mean, you all make Black History Month February the coldest month of the year, and now you're mad because we get a couple days in June to celebrate when it's hot outside. You know how cold the Martin Luther King Day March is on Martin Luther King Boulevard? I mean, this is just ridiculous. This is what you're opposed to. Keep listening.
Same thing that happens before NFL games where they play the Black National Anthem. This recognition of this as a quote-unquote federal holiday comes right out of the 1619 Project. Look who's most excited that this is a federal holiday. And they're not talking about this as a massive celebration. Oh, wow, look how far blacks have come. It has now become a racial complaining day.
Oh.
Now we have a full day to be able to smear and slander white America.
Notice how he centered himself. Here's a problem. And this is why we need people like this to debate. For you all who don't know, Juneteenth was the day in Texas when black people, a day in Texas in June, when black people found out that President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation. As you know, they didn't have email and text messages. So by the time the information and the knowledge got down to black people, It was Juneteenth. They don't necessarily remember what day it actually started in Galveston, Texas. And that's what happened. And now you're angry that black people are celebrating their freedom in the land of the free and the home of the brave as a result of the civil rights war that we fought. Keep listening.
Holiday is a wedge, and I put in quotes, holiday is a wedge used to push for countless destructive policies demanded by BLM. And remember what BLM stands for: burn, loot, and murder.
Oh, Lord.
Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday is a nationalized race hustle.
So this is the man that they want us to feel empathy for, okay? This is the man they want us to feel empathy for. All right? I just want you to think about that. This is why, and you wonder why black people have mixed feelings about Charlie Kirk. You want to know why? Things like this, and that's not it. We got more for you, more hits from Charlie Kirk. Here's another one, and there you go. And this actually is being. I'm gonna actually let you hear this one first, and this is actually a brother who gives his critique about the subject matter. But I like it because it shows Charlie Kirk getting some pushback. Listen to this.
Doing irreparable damage.
To all my followers, I wasn't a fan of Charlie Kirk, but I like to hear him debate, and I like when he lose like this.
Can you tell me what African country is currently ongoing a civil war? Believe it or not, I know about Sudan. Okay, good. I'm not an idiot. How about what Southeast Asian country has an ethnic cleansing going on right now? Myanmar. Good. And you have strong opinions on both sides? Unlike you, I take an effort to be informed about foreign policy and to come to conclusions. You are a culture warrior. I believe when everything is done, Mr. Kirk, people will see you and the people you supported as corrupt, as selling the country out to the lowest bidder, and of doing irreparable damage to a country I'm sure we all deep down love. The difference, you will have to reckon with that. Difference Mr. Kirk. Is when.
See, I like when people lose at their own game. By taking him out like they did yesterday, it's only gonna make it worse. They're gonna push legislation with that. You know what I mean? The right side, they're gonna take that and they're gonna replay all those videos and say the left is so mean and they're violent. And then when election time come again, you know what I mean? We gonna feel that. When it comes to violence, as a black dude, right? I know I'm always outnumbered and I'm always outgunned. I mean, it's people even in my own neighborhood they got guns pointed at me, right? So I know I'm outgunned. So I gotta think. I gotta strategize. I gotta think.
So the whole point of that is you see where he's getting pushback from people. And that's how we do things in civilized society. You know, we don't push for political assassinations or anything like that. That's not what we do. This is a country of ideas. This is a nation of ideas. And this is how discourse takes place. Now, I want you to listen to something else. And this is what I also found.
Actually better in the 1940s. It was bad. It was evil. But what happened? Something changed.
Do you hear that? Now, this is him saying that life was better for us black people, during Jim Crow. I'm gonna let you all listen to this again. Okay?
Shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad. It was evil. But what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Maybe they were afraid. I mean, 4,000 black men, women, and children were killed.
So also my problem is this. Oftentimes, and you heard Charlie Kirk say that black people were better in the 1940s. That was during the height of Jim Crow. I went over that. The problem that I also have is they allow the wrong people to speak on behalf of black people. They never let black people who actually would know what they're talking about. They always get people who are ill-equipped to represent us, which is also a problem. So we are never properly represented in the public discourse. Okay, they'll let entertainers do it. They'll let rappers do it, and that is the problem that black people have also. Let's keep listening.
In violent lynch mobs.
That's your explanation, but
racial terror permeated American culture for hundreds of years.
Black America is worse than it has been.
That affected
in the last 80 years.
The generational psyche of an entire.
Basically, what the gentleman is saying that Black America is worse with freedom and dignity and rights and the right to have property and the right to vote. We're worse off now with these pesky rights, so we should revert back and take these rights away. This is what is the end of this? What is the end game with this? To send us back to the plantation? Because that's what it sounds like. Keep listening.
A group of people?
No, I'm sure it did. I'm not discounting that. I'm just trying to show
you are discounted, sir. You are discounted. You haven't proved. By what metric are we better off? You see, that would have been a follow-up question. Let him go ahead and explain himself. But again, there are black people who also supported Charlie Kirk. And we have to acknowledge them. There are black people out here who befriended the man. And there's obvious reasons why. Okay, there's reasons. Some of the stuff he said actually makes sense. And I'm gonna let you hear something that I actually agree with. All right, listen to this.
captive by influence.
Nicki Minaj is causing dads to leave the home.
Hold on a second. I don't think that's a good role model for 18.
I'm gonna let you all
right now. Black culture is being held captive by influences, songs. Right now, black culture is being held captive by influences, songs,
Which
and role models.
influences?
I mean, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B.
Okay, Nicki Minaj is causing dads to leave the home.
Hold on a second. I don't think that's a good.
He's not wrong. And for all the black people in the chat room, he's not wrong when he says that. Okay? Keep listening.
Good role model for 18-year-old black girls. I don't think that songs that are talking about like glorifying wet female genitalia is exactly, I don't know which one wrote that song. Which one was it?
I think it was Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, that's right. But by the way, the role models of the 1940s and 50s for black America were completely different.
Now, again, what you see him doing is the same old racist trick. You go back in the past, you pull some black person from the past and compare them to the black people in the future as if they didn't have raunchy rappers and entertainers in those juke joints back in the day who were raunchy for their time. Okay. But bottom line is, I will agree with him that people like Cardi B and Nicki Minaj have hijacked black culture. And before that, it was some other rappers and some other entertainers. But the question you have to ask yourself, how were these people even empowered? What structure allowed them to have a voice in music that can be heard all the way across America and all around the world? Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, it goes back to those same institutions, those same radio stations, those same white-owned record companies and television. So let's just keep it 100. Let's keep listening.
It is a representation issue.
Hold on a second. No, not representation. It's who do you get your art from? It's what values are they putting forward? For example, more times than not, black politicians will lament the condition of America. It's systemically racist. It's terrible. What does that do to a 14-year-old black kid if you just find that you hear that everything is rigged against you? Instead, they should be saying, hey, there might be some barriers, but if you believe in yourself enough, you can achieve in this country. It creates a form of social conditioning of low expectations. And that's not my argument. You know whose argument that is? Barack Obama's.
Okay. So again, I think we all can agree that black culture has been hijacked, that there are aspects of black culture that is degenerate. And that is something that we need to deal with. But the other problem is, family, a lot of us played a part in that, okay? A lot of us participated in that. Now, I'm going to play something, but I tell you guys all the time, you have to be mindful of the things you say, because when you say things, they will be repeated by people who do not have your best interest at heart. So when they see us sitting up here talking bad about each other, calling each other all these degenerate names, when you have black women telling black men that they're body bags, and black men telling black women how scummy and low they are and degenerate they are and all this sort of stuff, folks that don't like you will use that, okay? I'm gonna let you hear one. Here's a prime example of it right now.
Black man, I'm a proud man. But nigga, when we go to grouping together, I'm shamed. I'm shamed walking down Miami Beach, nigga, and seeing them fine ass Dominicans. I look over at my sisters, they got them big bellies. They get into the goddamn water, they walk around.
Now this cat right here is big on Instagram, and You know, you think Charlie Kirk is bad. Charlie Kirk is a moderate compared to some of these other cats. Keep listening.
What they weave in their hand, cause their heart can't get wet. Shame. Shame. Shame, nigga. Why? I don't love nothing about black culture. I'm 46 years old, my nigga. I can't think of nothing in life that black people can be proud of in 46 years. We ain't done one goddamn thing that we can.
Now, here's the problem that I have with this gentleman right here. When you say black people, you're talking about all people, all foundational black Americans. And just like white people and any other group of people, you're going to have degenerates in your group. But I take offense to Charleston White putting me and other successful black people who are disciplined and hardworking and family oriented and who love ourselves, love our families, and love our country. Don't put me in the same category as you put a Pookie and a Ray Ray. If that's who you hang around and that's who you base your assessment on, you go right on ahead and do that. But don't lump all of us in with you all. Okay, that's the problem that I have, because when you say those things, then it makes our lives harder, because people like this gentleman, people like Charlie Kirk will take that information and run with it. Okay, so keep that in mind, but let's keep listening.
Can be proud of and say I'm black and I'm proud.
In all seriousness, for the black people that are awake and see what's going on, I kind of feel bad for you guys. Yeah, that sucks. We got 90% of blacks making 10% of blacks look bad. Nothing for blacks to be proud of. I totally agree. W. Charleston White.
Yeah, let's keep listening to that. So here's another one. All right, just popping off at the mouth, and people will take it. People that don't like it will take it against all. Let's keep listening. And so this is the ilk, but this is also, again, when I'm talking to you, this is the same rhetoric that black people have been listening to for centuries. Okay. Here's
first thing you would do. If I was the president, the first thing I would do, I ain't gonna lie, I'm black and I'm proud, but I hate niggas though, I swear.
I mean, you're just doing it for the gram, you see? All right, let's keep listening.
I gotta find a way to put a restraint on some niggas. I was like, a lot wrong with our country because of niggas. I swear to God, every other culture look out for themselves. Niggas be geeking. Like, niggas are the reason why America is the way it is. And white people too. White people too. No bullshit.
The other thing you gotta understand is some of these folks are not even foundational black Americans. Some of these people are immigrants. And you don't know what their background is, but let's keep listening.
Niggas be geeking though, for real. So I gotta do something about the niggas though. I gotta keep them in line. I keep them in line, bro. We gotta make some laws for niggas. No bullshit. Strictly
So the
niggas.
question is, what would be the first thing you did if you were the president? And this is all not try to achieve world peace, not increase the economy. The first thing you would do would go against black people. And he's using the term N-word as a general term for all black people. And I take offense to that, but let's keep listening.
That's they first. Niggas first, and then everybody else.
Let's go. This guy's awesome. That is a black people W. This guy knows what's up. He's not playing the victim card. Guys, don't let 90% of blacks ruin the other 10% of blacks for you. There's a lot of good black people out here.
You hear that? You hear what this dude said? Don't let the 90% of blacks. So basically, he think all of y'all ain't spit. You understand me? Keep listening. Okay, so this is who you're dealing with. And of course, and I'm going to let this play first of all. This is for all you folk out there. And I know we got some African people listening. I want you to hear what they really think about you. Okay, listen to this. But they hear us in our diaspora.
African Americans, their average IQ is about 85.
Now I'm talking. This is Nick Fuentes. I think we know who this gentleman is. All right, this gentleman. Again, I'm just letting you all hear what's out there and why. I mean, I would feel no more empathy for this gentleman if he, passed away, as most black people wouldn't feel much empathy for him. as they feel for Charlie Kirk. I'm just saying, and I don't want anything to happen to anybody. I don't believe in political violence, but some of the things these people are saying is horrible. You see, and we give them the ammunition to say it. Listen to what he has to say about Africans versus black people.
These black people, the ones you know, these African Americans, their average IQ is about 85. They'll shoot you for no reason. They'll mug you. They'll take your phone. But you are not ready for real Africans.
Real Africans.
Because real Africans, on average, have an IQ of 65. Different animal altogether. No pun intended. Totally.
Animal.
This is a different kind of person we're talking about. You think it's bad when they're running after you, they're going to kick the shit out of you, steal your iPhone, your AirPods. These people are going to chase you down because they think you have gold nuggets inside your head. And they're going to crack your skull open with crude stone tools to get it. That's a different ball game. They're going to be throwing spears at your neck, at your throat, bow and arrow. And they're cannibals. They will eat your organs. They will literally gut you like a fish and eat your internal organs. You thought it was bad holding a gun sideways to your head? Hey, give me your money, bitch. This is advanced darkness. This is heart of darkness.
Where you Africans at? This is what they say about you all. When you all try to separate, I am not black. I am not black. This is what they think about. I'm just saying, none of this is funny. We are not laughing at this. Okay, this is racist, and we are not laughing at any of this. This little Italian man, Nick Fuente, we will not laugh at this little Italian man with these horrible racial epithets directed at Africans and African Americans. But I'm saying, for you Africans out there, you know, you go, oh, you black America, it's been like this so violent. This is what they think about you. In all seriousness, let's keep listening.
This is the jungle drum. This is the fertility goddess of chaos. They're literally going to eat your balls. They're going to cut your fucking nuts off and eat them.
Little motherfucker, man. Oh, excuse my language, man. This is what I'm saying. But and I wanted to put that out there because there is this notion amongst Africans that they are somehow perceived as more enlightened or better than, or somehow you know, they do their very best to separate themselves from Africans. Here's an example.
Kenyan, Zimbabwe, and the professor one time called one of them black, and they almost lost their shit. They're like, I'm not black.
Really?
100%. They treated it like if it was a dirty word, like them being called black was a dirty word. I'm not black. I'm from Nigeria. I'm not black. Like offended, and I sat there and I'm like, what the fuck, like this?
What the fuck is going
She's
on?
fucking crashing out over this, and then it dawned on me: Africans, even they are racist against black people in America.
Yeah.
Just like how there's colorism in Mexico.
Isn't
I
that
just
fucking
posted.
crazy?
And so again, even in our discourse, when we deal with this diaspora war that we have, and we are demanding our respect from our African brothers and sisters, be mindful of the fact that there are others who will use your words and disparage you. This is the whole point of that. Now, that being the case, there are also black people who are genuinely empathetic and for the loss of Charlie Kirk, because that's what we're talking about. And I don't want to get too far distracted or drift too far away from the point of this subject matter. And again, like I said, there are black people who truly empathize with his loss. And here's a young lady here.
Same time last year, I was pregnant with my second child, volunteering at one of Charlie's events. And I am so beyond sick to my stomach thinking that his fucking blood spatter could have been on my t-shirt. This is the turning point. And what needs to happen now is a total, full and complete drain of the fucking swamp. Every reporter, every journalist, every mayor, every senator, every representative of Congress who has promoted violence against us needs to be held accountable. And I will not
So she's very passionate. Okay, this young lady is very passionate. Okay, let's
stop.
keep listening.
I will call every single one of you out by name until you lose your job and you lose everything that you own.
All right, so there's one. So you see, there are black people who genuinely empathize with his loss. Again, you heard what he said about black culture, right? And he's not wrong when it comes to it's been hijacked by some of the degenerates who are singing these songs. It's not wrong, okay? You know, but then, you know, there are black people who support Charlie Kirk and who supported him and whatnot. And then, you know, there's a special kind of black people who supported Charlie Kirk, and we'll let them speak also. Keep listening.
My God.
Mm-hmm. Let's listen.
Oh my God. My God, Charlie. Charlie Kirk, oh my God. Oh no, my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I just want you to keep in mind that I'm not saying this woman's tears are not sincere. The fact that she set her telephone up to get in front of it and cry, don't judge her because of that, okay? And we're not saying that this is performative. However, the fact that she has this much emotion for somebody who said that we were better off before we had rights and dignity, I find, to say the least, I find that intriguing. Let's continue listening.
Charlie doesn't deserve this. What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
What is going on? 31-year-old, beautiful wife, 2 children, now he's gone. This is evil. This is not acceptable. This is evil. Why?
Now, I want you to contrast this with some of the stuff that the white people were saying about this gentleman. Let's keep listening. Go ahead.
So we have become so divided in this country that people don't have political opinion. People have taken it upon themselves to kill anyone that speaks truth. Doesn't Charlie have the right to speak the truth, irrespective of the fact whether you agree on what he said or on what he believes? What kind of world is this? This is not America. This is not the kind of America we dream for our children.
This is America, ma'am.
Charlie is God, confirmed by President Trump.
Shout out to everybody who's here with me and contributed to the super chat. But
oh my God, this is unfair. This is evil. The media has done this. The leftists have done this.
No, it wasn't the media that did it. It was a little white boy, 22, named Tyler, that did it, baby. Okay? But go ahead.
Ridiculed this man for years, calling him and rebranding him what he's not. This is political violence. This is out of terrorism. This is not acceptable. If it's Charlie today, tomorrow, it can be me, it can be you, it can be anybody. This is unacceptable. Oh my God, Charlie.
Political violence.
Political violence. Oh my God, I pray for the family. This is evil. This is bad.
Yeah, so I mean, there are black people who are empathizing and who have strong feelings about the loss of Charlie Kirk. So, you know, but the large, I would say the vast majority of black people who they don't feel anything because they didn't know him. You know, most black people really didn't have those sort of things.
Now that he's gone. But let's be real, he spent his entire life denying humanity to literally everyone else. So don't expect softness now. This man wasn't just a conservative talking head. He called the Civil Rights Act a mistake. He said Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was nothing more than a DEI hire. He smeared Dr. King, mocked black professionals, stoked fear of immigrants. and spend every breath turning white grievance into a brand. That's not political disagreement. That's a career built on stripping dignity away from entire groups of people. And here's the thing, right? The second he's gone, suddenly people want compassion. Suddenly it's about his family, his humanity, his legacy. Where was that energy when he was tearing ours down? When he was spitting on the humanity of Black people, Latinos, immigrants, queer folks? We're supposed to forget the damage because the man is dead? Death doesn't erase the harm. Death doesn't clean a record. And let's not pretend that that shot was sloppy rage. It was too clean. It was too sharp. Whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. And the irony is that Charlie worshiped that same culture of guns and violence. He fed it. He amplified it. And it came back for
Now, whether or not you think is true that what this lady is saying about Charlie Kirk and his statements, this is the perception that Black people have. Okay, and you heard what the white folks had to say, so it's not that far off. So irrespective of what his supporters think he said, irrespective of what you heard, this is what the vast majority of people think or interpret his words and his actions as. So keep that in mind.
for him. That's not karma. That's America. So no, I'm not going to rewrite his story into something soft. The only sympathy that I have is for his children, because they didn't ask for his poison. But for Charlie Kirk, he made it his life's mission to divide, belittle, and dehumanize. And that's exactly how history should remember him. Not as a victim, not as a martyr, but as the hateful man that he chose to be. I think it's time you meet one of my puppies. This is Cooks.
Go on and
This
get
is
somebody else in here. More Black people have more to say.
Me Cookie.
Still at large. The evil ones will try to weaponize Charlie Kirk's death and use it as a reason to be violent towards others.
This video's in regards to Charlie Kirk. And this video's for the fucking liberals. It's war, motherfuckers. We're coming for you. We're coming for you. And spare me your fucking self-righteous.
So you got white people using this as a reason to be angry. Come to find out, the young alleged shooter was a member of the NRA and was, for all intents and purposes, I don't know what the young man's political affiliation was, and I'm talking about the alleged shooter, 22-year-old young man named Tyler. I don't know what his political affiliation is, but you know, people are using this as a reason to go after the people that they wanted to go after for a long time. And that's why he mentions liberals, but nevertheless, Black people at HBCUs feel threatened because people called in to try to, they had terror scares, and people called in saying they're going to shut, and they had to shut down the HBCUs, Southern University, Clark Atlanta. And, you know, so people will use this as a reason to lash out at the people that they always wanted to lash out in the first place. Let's keep listening.
Just bullshit lectures. I don't give a fuck. We're coming for you.
Where was this outrage when Democrat House Representative Melissa Hartman and her husband were gunned down in their home by Republican Vance Bolter just a couple months ago? The Trump administration has been trying to sweep that under the rug. That was political violence, and the shooter was a Republican. Where was the outrage then? Red and blue are Americans. Stop using death to try to turn Americans against each other. Charlie Kirk didn't believe in empathy. So if you love Charlie Kirk and you have empathy for him, you're going against everything Charlie Kirk stood for.
I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage. But
in Charlie Kirk's eyes, you're weak if you have empathy. I feel sorry for Charlie Kirk because he believed that the white race should always be the most superior.
The great replacement of white people is far more sinister than any redistricting project, which is the continued attempt to eliminate the white population in this country. I'm sorry, if I see a Black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
I feel sorry for Charlie Kirk because
I can't wait till he find out that Jesus is Black. I can't wait till he gets to the pearly gates and he meets God, and God said, "What's up, bro? What's happening?" And greet him with some with a soul shake. I can't wait. I can't wait for that to happen. Let's keep listening.
the God that Charlie Kirk served was the same God that the KKK believed in. Charlie Kirk served the same God that slave owners believed in. Charlie Kirk served the same God that people who owned white-only establishments believed in. My opinion is that I think Charlie Kirk was a racist, but I feel sorry for Charlie Kirk because even though Charlie Kirk talked about God, He didn't serve the same God that I serve. My God believes in empathy. My God believes that we are all the same no matter what race you are. This is a time for forgiveness and understanding. If you have violence on your mind, that means you're letting the devil move through you, and that will not be a great outcome.
Yeah. So again, as we talk about violence, I saw something very interesting that I want to share with you all, and that is the notion of political violence. And I kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, but this is clearly a case of political violence. But at the end of the day, what is political violence? When you have someone who disagrees with you and your views, and black people are not
men that were assassinated for political violence, and all they wanted
political violence is not something that black people are not accustomed to. Listen to the
was
system.
equality. Medgar Evers, June 12, 1963, he was shot in the back in his driveway in front of his wife and children by a white supremacist named Byron Della Beckwith, and it took decades to get justice for his unaliving. He worked with the NAACP for equality. Malcolm X, February 21st, 1964. He was shot 21 times, assassinated by a joint project with the local NYPD and COINTELPRO, a subgroup of the FBI. He also left behind a wife and children he would never see grow up, just like Medgar Evers. He fought for the equality of black people. Martin Luther King Jr., April 4th, 1968. He was shot on a balcony at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. He also left behind a wife and children. He also fought for equality. He was also assassinated by a white supremacist, James Earl Ray, in conjunction with COINTELPRO. Fred Hampton, December 4th, 1969. He was shot in his bed while asleep, laying next to his pregnant wife. His assassins were the Chicago Police Department and COINTELPRO, the subgroup of the FBI. He also was fighting for equality. Political violence is ingrained in the history of this country, just like guns are. I'd also like to point out that when these men were assassinated, majority of media outlets did not look at it as a tragedy, and no flags were brought to half-mast.
Martin Luther King died one of the most hated men in America at the time of his death. This embracing him as a civil rights leader only came about after his passing, because people saw it as an opportunity to turn his words against the political movements of black people that were current at the time.
For these men who fought and died for equality, never getting to see their children grow up. They weren't spreading hate. They were looking for a better life without racism in it. Imagine that costing you your life. Equality, not hate. I love you, black man. I love you, black woman. Knowledge is power. Power to the people.
I'm trying to
do not represent who we are as black America any more than the actions of
the white guy that shot the president in the ear.
I want you to listen to this. Listen to what this young brother has to say, because you know, there's a lot of people trying to blame all black people for what's going on. So listen to what the brother has today, okay?
Carlo Brown do not represent who we are as black America any more than the actions of
the white guy that shot the president in the ear last year, or the white guy who just unalived Charlie Kirk in front of a crowd of like 1,000 people.
Now that is not the man who allegedly they arrested this older man and they let him go. So this is actually misinformation. This is old, but it's poignant nonetheless. Okay, so this gentleman here is not. He was detained and released. He is not the person. The young man is Tyler, who they say is the primary suspect and is currently arrested, under arrest.
Just a few hours ago. Most of us do not condone that, so please do not behave as if we do.
No, I wouldn't classify this as a hate crime. Not because I support this guy, but because that would disregard the public safety threat that he poses to literally everyone around him. However, I do understand why someone would before they find out.
This very same man was convicted of beating and robbing a Hispanic man with a gun. His own mother kicked him out of her house for being violent towards her and even admitted that he should never have been free to begin with. He was involved in an attack on his own sister where he allegedly bit her like a dog. And when it comes to hate crimes, people who commit them typically have some sort of agenda against specific groups of people. But this man was a danger to any and everybody. And anybody who says he wasn't is just disingenuous. And this was him right before he did it.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I had to guess what was going through his mind in that moment, it wouldn't be systemic racism or ways to invoke black supremacy. My guess would be something similar to what he was thinking back in January when he
repeatedly called 911 to report a government-planted chip inside of his brain that dictated his actions. And in response, law enforcement told him that it was a medical issue and that it was nothing that they could do about it. Brown became very upset with the officers and called 911 again, which he was arrested for.
In no reasonable or functioning society would a guy like this be able to continue walking the streets. Like, how does he, as a man with a violent history as it is, call the police? And when they get there, tell them that something is inside of him and controlling his actions and not be involuntarily admitted into a psych ward. The man needs to be in a straitjacket. And you can make this about race all you want. But just know, you're taking away from time that we could be talking about the real issue, which is that it is very many individuals like this right now showing all the red flags.
All right. So again, we've heard all these same arguments. We've heard them. I mean, I think there was a famous entertainer who said black people don't get to have mental issues. But again, there are people who supported Charlie Kirk, and there are some people who would say he's a moderate. And when I say they literally mean that the things that he said were moderate. What translates to me is what he said was commonly understood in that community. I want you to hear what this gentleman has to say. He basically is saying that, he was a moderate and he was holding back the dike of racism, or he had his thumb in the dike. Keep listening to what he has to say, and I'm gonna put it in context for you before we move on.
He's banned people like NF from attending Turning Point events. Like, if you're right wing, like actually right wing, he would ban you. He was a pretty moderate guy. Banning people from attending, I don't know if you guys have ever talked to like 18, 20-year-olds right now that are coming up, but those kids are like racist. They are racist. And it's actually going to get significantly worse because their whole life they've been told that they're evil. If you're a conservative, they're told that they have white supremacist ideology, which is not the case. We just want our freedoms. It's super simple. We just want people to face punishment if they commit crime.
Well, what about all the crimes that you all commit? What about that, sir? All right, well, that's another subject. Let's keep listening.
So that we can be safe instead of letting them go on the street. That's not white supremacist ideology. And when you label people as white supremacists, Nazis, it's called othering. And it's insane that people are still doing that to white people, especially to the younger demographic. They're just not going to respond lightly. Charlie being gone creates a massive social vacuum that's going to be filled by people that are not nice like Charlie. If you thought Charlie was bad, you're just in trouble for what's
Charlie was nice. That's what this
really coming.
All right. So here's the thing. He's saying, "Oh no, these young people are worse. These young people are not. They are. They're mild, as if it just came from nowhere." I want you to hear. I'd like to hear his response to this one right here. Look at this angry gentleman here.
This country is shit. It's all brown and shit. I fucking hate this.
And that is clearly a 50 to 60-year-old man talking about he's mad because there's too many brown people in the brown country. Well, what was a brown country when you showed up, sir? There was the people called Native Americans, and they clearly were brown when you got here. It's been a brown country. It's a brown country. Now it's going to continue to be a brown country, sir. I'm just saying. Okay, but these young people didn't get this from nowhere.
Fucking Pakis, niggers, and Arabics.
Damn.
Leave.
N-words in Arabics. Okay, I'm just saying, you say these kids, this gentleman said the kids are worth. Where do you think they got it from? Huh? Think they showed up out of nowhere? Is that what you think, sir? You think this came nowhere? You think these folks, these young kids were, oh man, it's going to get worse now. These kids are worse. No, it's been the same thing. It's always been the same thing. It has not changed. And this is what black folks are telling you. It is the same racism passed down generation to generation. So cut it out. All right, we're going to cut it out. And we're going to have honest conversations with each other. We're not going to play these silly games, and you're going to not pass it off as if this is new. In fact, you got some folk, they had a rally after the man's passing away. This is how they were rallying in his name.
White man, fight back! White man, fight back! White man, fight back! White man,
this is how they were rallying.
White man, fight back!
After the gentleman, Charlie Kirk, was unalive. Now, who do they want to fight back against? Because he was unalive by a young white man. Who is it that you want to fight back against? See, that's the problem. Now you're angry and you want to fight back, but he was unalive by a young white man with a rifle. Okay? And that's where we are. That's where we are today in America right now. Okay? This is where we are. And this is our position right now after the passing of this young man. And the other thing, again, and let's get back to the subject matter from a psychological standpoint. What we're witnessing in Black America is a collision of grief, trauma, and cognitive dissonance. And on one level, we are human beings who can recognize the tragedy of life cut short, but on the other level, we're being asked to extend mourning to someone who spent his career undermining our humanity. And the expectation that produces a profound conflict. And we're not the only ones that feel like that. Did you see all those white people? I'm gonna have to run that back again. Society tells us to separate the person from their politics, as if the two exist in different universes. But for Black folks, politics have never been abstract talking points to argue over on television. Politics determine whether we can vote, whether our schools are funded, whether we can access healthcare, whether our children are criminalized, whether our families are safe from violence. In other words, politics decide whether we live or die. And that's why Charlie Kirk's politics cannot be treated as just benign opinions. They were not harmless disagreements about taxes or zoning laws. They were weapons aimed at delegitimizing Black progress and undermining Black rights and denying our very humanity. And those weapons left scars. And they created real barriers, real pain, and real consequences for people who look like me, who look like us. And so the dissonance is this. We are told to mourn, you better mourn, while pretending his weapons never existed. We're told to grieve his death while ignoring the damage of his life's work. That tension is exhausting because it requires us to deny our experiences in order to meet the expectations of the larger society that has rarely mourned for us and our loved ones and our political heroes. See, for Black America, this is not just grief. It's grief layered with memory and memory layered with injury. And that's the weight we're carrying in this moment. Kirk's death doesn't erase the harm he caused. It doesn't wipe away the tears the years that he spent telling young white people that diversity, really Black and brown people, were their enemy. Shout out to Black and brown progress were their enemy. Shout out to Black Sand. He basically told them that equity was stealing from them. It was theft, and inclusion was their oppression. It doesn't restore the dignity stripped away from Black professionals who were written off as DEI hires because people who listened to him were brainwashed with that rhetoric. These same people, they weren't recognized as qualified, capable leaders because of the things he said. It doesn't roll back the suspicious and the side eye and the second guessing that countless Black students and employees endured because of Kirk and people like him, okay, who insisted that that our presence lowered the standards. What this man's death does, what it does is it forces us into a conversation about the consequences of extremist rhetoric. Because Kirk didn't simply express political opinions, he trained a generation to view Black advancement as illegitimate and to see our equality as a threat to their survival. That's not commentary, that's indoctrination. And indoctrination at that scale with millions of followers it creates a ripple effect that's going to be felt for a long time after he's gone. And his legacy is not neutral. It lives in the classrooms where Black students are told they only got there because of affirmative action. It lives in the boardrooms where Black executives are dismissed as token appointments. It lives in the online spaces where white grievances is stoked into rage, where memes mocking Black success are passed around like gospel, and where extremist ideologies find fertile ground. So when we say his passing doesn't undo the damage, this is what we mean. The rhetoric he spent years promoting didn't die with him. It lingers, it spreads. It shapes the culture around us. Shout out to Drew Titan. And unless it is confronted directly and bravely, it's going to continue to define how Black progress is viewed in America. That's why this moment is not just about the tragedy of one man's life cut short. It's about the broader question of how much harm his words have caused, especially considering that they've been amplified and empowered, and their influence, and the fact that his platform reaches millions. Okay? And see, here's where it gets more complicated. See, Charlie Kirk was both a contributor to and ultimately a victim of the climate of division he helped create. He normalized the idea that certain groups were enemies of America, the same America that we helped build. And as far as foundational Black Americans are concerned, we're the fundamental reason why it was built in the first place. Nevertheless, that rhetoric creates permission structures for violence. And eventually that monster you feed turns on you. The true tragedy, I think, the true tragedy of Charlie Kirk's death is not just that he died and he left a beautiful family, is that the man died at only 31 years old. And at that age, he was barely old enough to understand the depth and complexity of life, let alone the weight of history. See, 31 is an age when many of us are still forming our worldview, still testing our ideas against the reality of lived experience. It's an age when you often think you got life figured out, only to look back later and realize how little you actually knew. He hadn't met that Black drill sergeant yet that took him under the wing and showed him what to do. He hadn't met that Black police officer or that Black professor or that Black teacher that, really helped him understand what he needed to understand about life at that particular juncture. He didn't have that Black comrade, friend, or associate who was truly there for him. And he had to look back and say, man, that was my buddy, that made him change his opinions and his direction on certain things. He hadn't got there yet. He hadn't ran across that Black intellectual that thoroughly challenged him and beat him down in an equal debate so that he would formulate that respect. And see, that's why Charlie Kirk's death feels layered with irony. See, for all of his bluster, Kirk didn't live long enough to see the full arc of wisdom that age and experience can bring. See, human beings change over time, and our perspectives shift, our hearts soften, and our priorities mature. We make these mistakes in our youth, and we sometimes spend the rest of our lives trying to correct that. The tragedy here is that Kirk will never have the chance. See, we'll never know what kind of man he could have become had he lived long enough to actually experience that humbling and humanizing set of lessons that life invariably delivers. I'm going to give you an example that you guys probably don't even understand and never thought of. I'm going to give you an example. Let's start with one that I know y'all are probably like, oh, no, he didn't. Nathan Bedford Forrest. This was one of the most notorious racists in American history. He was a Confederate officer. He was a slave trader. This man was one of the founding members of the Ku Klux Klan. He was there when it started. And in the early part of his life, Nathan Bedford Forrest embodied everything destructive about white supremacy racism. By any measure, he would not be considered a friend of black people or any other people of color. And yet, as Forrest grew older, something shifted, and accounts from the later years of his life show a man who began to reject the very ideology he once championed. He distanced himself from the Ku Klux Klan. He called for racial reconciliation. This is Nathan Bedford Forrest, and even made public gestures of goodwill towards black people. In 1875, Nathan Bedford Forrest gave a speech to a black civic organization. The fact that they invited him lets you know that they had seen that he had publicly changed. This man made a speech to a bunch of black people in which he advocated for unity and mutual respect. Now, for a man who started the KKK, a man who fought on the side of the Confederacy, a man who was a slave trader himself, that is an extraordinary reversal for a man with that sort of background. He even supported the creation of public spaces, specifically parks, where people of all races could gather as a symbolic act of atonement for a life spent promoting division. Keep in mind, this is at the height of Jim Crow. They were still lynching black people at this time. There was all the things I described earlier about the lynch mob. This is what this man advocated. Nathan Bedford Forrest. He's credited with his redemption. Shout out to Animal Advocate. And we can't take that away from him. Nevertheless, his legacy of racism and his time is deeply on this planet is deeply scarred by the violence and terror that he unleashed. But this illustrates a powerful truth. People can change. And sometimes with age and reflection, even those who once embodied full out hate can grow into something different, something better. And that's what makes Kirk's early demise so tragic. At 31, he didn't know anything. He didn't live long enough to reach the point of wisdom. He never had the chance to reflect, to reconsider, to grow beyond the extremism that defined him in his youth. We'll never know. We'll never know if he could have taken the path toward redemption because his story ended before the chapter could be written. Here's another one. George Wallace. This is the infamous governor of Alabama. In the 1960s, Wallace became the face of segregation, standing defiantly in front of the schoolhouse door to block the black students from entering the University of Alabama. He wants to declare segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And to many, Governor Wallace embodied political cruelty of the Jim Crow South. But life has a way of humbling even the most hardened hearts. After surviving an assassination attempt in 1972 that left him paralyzed, Governor Wallace began to reflect differently on his legacy. By the late 1970s and into the 1980s, he publicly sought forgiveness from Black people in Alabama. He met with civil rights leaders, appointed Black judges and public officials, and even earned support from segments of the Black community in his later political campaigns. Wallace admitted that his early positions were wrong, and his segregationist views had inflicted real harm. Now, was his transformation complete? No. And many will always remember him as the face of white resistance in the face of white supremacy opposed to civil rights for Black people. But his story stands as proof that people can evolve, even those who once fought the hardest against justice. And this, too, is a lesson that makes Charlie Kirk's death at such a young age, 31, so tragic. Like Governor George Wallace, he might have lived long enough to see his own words come back to him, to feel the weight of their consequences and seek a different path. But he never got that chance. His story ended before reflection and redemption could take root. And that's the bittersweet truth here. We know that even the most committed segregationists and down-hardened racists in American history have sometimes changed when age and wisdom and life forces them to face reality. Kirk didn't live long enough to find out if he could have been one of them. Now, those two gentlemen, they hit a redemption arc. But one of my favorite and most racist presidents in the history of America, but still one of my favorite, is Harry S. Truman. And let me tell you why. This man, by all accounts, was born in a culture of racism. The man was born in Lamar, Missouri in 1884 at the height of Jim Crow. He came of age in a border state steeped in segregation, Confederate nostalgia everywhere, deep in racial prejudice. By his own admission, he was racist and held racist views, and and he threw the N-word around like tennis balls at the country club, both in public and in his private life. He never pretended otherwise, never. And yet, President Truman, the same man who carried all that racial baggage, who made one of the most consequential decisions for Black Americans in the 20th century. Keep in mind, this is the same man who dropped the atomic bomb, who gave the order as soon as he found out we had the A-bomb, dropped Nagasaki, authorized drop Fat Man, the little boy, on Nagasaki and Hiroshima to end World War II in the Pacific. That's who we talking about. But this same stone cold, hardened, racist president, on July 26, 1948, he signed Executive Order 9981. And what did this do? It said this, it said, there shall be equality of treatment and opportunity for all persons in the armed services without regard to race, color, religion, or national origin. Now that you may not understand the significance of that, but this is 1948 at the height of Jim Crow. And with the stroke of a pen, this racist president, right, from Missouri, which is one of the most racist, Missouri is the northernest most Confederate state, okay? But with the stroke of that pen, he began the process of desegregating the United States military and making sure our military men were treated, and women were treated fairly and equally in the U.S. military. This wasn't symbolism. It was policy with teeth. It created the President's Committee on Equality of Treatment and opportunity in the armed forces. Okay? And the military, family, the military was America's largest employer at the time. And its desegregation set off a ripple effect far beyond the barracks. Integration in the armed forces created pathways to education, to housing, post-war benefits for Black Americans, and it accelerated the social and economic changes that fueled the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. So while many people give credit to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Medgar Evers and all these different people, you think it was these people. Truman started it. Truman, the racist president, did it. And there's no evidence indicated that he stopped being racist after he changed it. There's no evidence of that. And let me tell you something. You got to understand a little bit about him. Number one, he was a soldier. Okay? Number one, he was a soldier. A high-ranking soldier that fought in World War I. And there was a story about a brother that I've actually talked about on my page, and his name was Sergeant Isaac Woodard. Now, Sergeant Isaac Woodard was a veteran of World War II. And after the war had ended, and we talking about a decorated veteran. After the war had ended, he was on his way home on a bus. He was on his way home with his uniform on the bus. And he was brutally beaten. Sergeant Isaac Woodard, a Black man, a decorated Black veteran, traveling home in his uniform, was snatched off the bus in South Carolina by the police and beaten so badly that he was permanently blinded simply for asking to use the restroom. This was the height of Jim Crow. Now, this is not Nazi Germany we're talking about. This was in the United States of America, only miles away from his hometown, after he had helped win the war overseas, liberating Europe. And that particular case horrified Truman, a racist man. Here it was, a man, and I'm talking about Sergeant Isaac Woodard, who had risked his life for our country, only to be destroyed by the very same system he served. So for Truman, who still carried a perspective of a soldier, and just so I can explain to you, he served as a captain. When I say he, I'm talking about President Truman served as a captain in the U.S. Army during World War I. And he led an artillery unit in France. And that experience, more likely than not, shaped the way he thought about military life and discipline. And by the time he became president during what we call the Cold War, Truman understood that the armed forces had to function as one unit and not as a fractured system. You see? And by the time this situation happened with Sergeant Isaac Woodard, World War II had already seen Black soldiers prove themselves beyond a doubt. The Tuskegee Airmen flew more than 15,000 missions in Europe, and they earned over 150,000 distinguished flying crosses. And the 92nd Infantry Division fought with distinction in Italy. You had black nurses and black mechanics and engineers and sailors. They kept the war machine running. And then you had millions of black people here on the home front operating the factories and keeping things going. That was the reason for the second migration, where you had black people coming north. And we're going to leave this South and this Jim Crow. We're going to go to North and we're going to work in these plants. Many of you all in Detroit and Chicago and all you different places, Oakland, LA, your ancestors, your parents got there because granddaddy was able to get a job and uncle was able to get a job and big brother was able to get a job and bring the whole family out there and help buy Big Mama a house. Nevertheless, our people showed the world that segregation wasn't just immoral, it was inofficial. It was wasteful. It was dangerous in combat. And Truman, as a soldier himself, recognized that you cannot ask men to fight and die for a country that denies them equality in its own ranks. And integration wasn't only about justice, it was about military readiness and America's strength in the Cold War. So when he learned about Sergeant Isaac Woodard, a decorated black veteran coming home through South Carolina who was blinded with a billy club and beaten, it horrified him. How can a man go overseas and risk his life for a country only to come back home and and be deprived of his very freedom? So that was the breaking point. This racist president, my favorite racist president, Harry S. Truman, I believe it was because a combination of military practicality and moral shock and the affinity that he had for the military and military men in general, military person. He signed this executive order desegregating the armed forces. And so here's the paradox. Truman probably never stopped being a racist at heart. He was still very much a product of Missouri in his upbringing. He didn't undergo some redemption arc like Nathan Bedford Forrest or Governor George Wallace. But he was intelligent enough and pragmatic enough and patriotic enough to recognize that America could not claim to lead the world while denying freedom to its own black citizens, especially its black soldiers. And the world was watching this. And this was the dawn of the Cold War. And segregation in America was America's Achilles heel. Truman understood that ending military segregation was not just morally right, it was strategically necessary. And that's an important lesson for this particular moment. Even racists, when intelligent, can figure out what's in the best interest of the country and act on it. They don't have to love us to make decisions that benefit us. They only need the wisdom and pragmatism and foresight to evolve their politics when times demand it. And this is where the tragedy of Charlie Kirk becomes clear. Whatever else you could say about him, he racist, not racist, white nationalist, the man was clearly intelligent. And intelligence by its nature forces you to evolve. It forces you to confront new facts, new realities, and new responsibilities as life goes on. He might never have become a racial ally of black, brown people, Hispanic people, chipmunks, dwarves, antelopes, whatever it was. He might have never redeemed himself in that regard, but he was smart enough and that at that age, okay, and wisdom and experience that could have pushed him toward positions that even he reluctantly wanted to arrive at and help move the country forward. That chance is now gone. At only 31 years old, Kirk never lived long enough to be humbled by life, to be reshaped by responsibility, or be forced into the kind of pragmatic evolution that transformed Harry S. Truman, former president, into an unlikely liberator of black people. And that's the true missed opportunity. Strategically, Black America is watching and learning. Hate-based movements might seem powerful in the short term, but they're never sustainable in the long run. History shows us this, and it shows us this over and over again. Movements built on fear, resentment, and scapegoating eventually devour themselves. They collapse under the weight of their own contradictions. Charlie Kirk's story is a case study in that truth. He built this platform on division, on telling young white folk that their greatest enemy was black people and brown people in this country. That inclusion was oppression, that black progress was a threat to their survival. And now it was a business model based on anger, always finding a new villain, stoking resentment, enough to generate clicks, followers, and donations, and advertising dollars. But the problem with fire is once it spreads, you don't get to control what it burns. Kirk discovered that lesson the hard way. The climate of extremism he helped nurture eventually turned inward, and he became one of the victims. What makes all of that not only morally wrong, but factually false is when you dig into the metrics. Listen to this. This man is telling white folks that their country's being taken away from them. I want you to hear. I want all the white people to come to the front of the room. White folk, come on to the front of the room. I want you to hear me. You have all of these alarmists and these racial bigots and these race grifters telling white people that you're somehow losing your country. Look, let's start with land ownership. White Americans own 98% of the privately controlled farmland in the United States. Okay, that's 98% of the acreage and 97% of the value of agricultural land. That means you control the food supply, white people. And look, what about wealth distribution? Households with white households with and when I say white, I'm talking about non-Hispanic white. I'm talking about your households. 65.3% of the U.S. households, okay? This is you. You hold 80% of the country's total wealth. 80%. Black houses, by comparison, because I know you like to make sure that you're doing much better than us. Okay, we 13% of the population, more or less. You 65% of the population. We 13%. You 65% of the population, you have 80% of the wealth, white people. Black people, 13% of the population. We only control 4.7% of the wealth. Our medium household wealth is $24,500. Yours is $250,000. Now I want you to think, what are you losing? Think about that. White people own more houses than everybody else in the group. Let me say it like this. The home ownership rate for white people, and I'm talking about non-Hispanic white people, is 73%, compared to only 41% for black people. So when you hear people like Kirk claim black progress is a threat, or that inclusion is unfair to white people, those claims don't hold up under scrutiny. White people already have every damn thing. You control the vast majority of land, the vast majority of the wealth, the property, and the power in the country, in nearly every level of power. Political offices, corporate boardrooms, land ownerships, judicial appointments. White people are in the majority, and often overwhelmingly so. That means that this entire rhetoric about your loss and your displacement, that's just a bunch of lies. It's a bunch of quick-witted exaggerations. It's fear-mongering rather than grounded data. And for Black America, the lesson is twofold. First, we're reminded of the danger of allowing rhetoric rooted in hate to go unchallenged. We should have been start arguing with him in public. We should have been shut that down, and we should do it now for all the rest of them, because words are not harmless. You need to come up with counter arguments and go back and forth with these people in public discourse so other people can listen. Because if you don't, they create permission structures for violence, and eventually that violence touches everyone, including those who thought they were immune. Second, we must be reminded of the resilience of our own movements. When we build on solidarity, truth, and justice, our ideas may be attacked, our leaders may be unalive, but the vision survives. Hate can't sustain itself, but justice can. That is why, even in this moment of tragedy, Black Americans can see clearly. We know that Kirk's legacy is not a roadmap for the future, it's a warning. And we also know that the forces of division will always exist, but they will never outlast the power of people committed to dignity and equality and survival. That's the human way. And his story proves what we've been saying for generations. Shout out to my man, Wrench Turner. It proves what we've been saying for a long time. Movements built on hate will eventually collapse, but movements built on justice will endure. Look, strategically, brothers, sisters, if you're watching and learning, okay, that's what we should be doing. Understand that hate-based movements might generate attention and followers and even temporary political wins, but they are never built to last. They burn out. Okay? They burn out. They burn hot, but they burn out because movements rooted in division require constant escalation. See, they always need a new villain. They always need a new scapegoat. They need a new group. If it ain't the Mexicans today, it's the blacks tomorrow, then it's gonna be the Arabs, then it's gonna be the Asians, then it's gonna be the Jewish people, then it's blah, blah, blah. They need a new group to target to stay relevant. And eventually the cycle consumes itself. See, Charlie Kirk's story is proof of this principle. He built his brand by convincing young white people that their biggest enemy wasn't poverty, it wasn't corruption, okay? It wasn't these multi-rich people that got them thinking that they're eventually gonna be rich and white like they are, even though they never will be because they look at you as nothing but a peasant. Oh no. Not the elite exploiting labor of poor people. Oh no. It's diversity. As they riding down the street in their expensive car to their private jet, oh, the diversity is what's keeping you down. I know I'm only paying you $7 an hour, white man, but you're white, so you're right. It's diversity holding you back. It's black advancement. You know, those 3 nickels that we gave to that black guy over there, that was supposed to be yours. That's what's holding you back. It's inclusion. Yeah, we're gonna let this black man play on the football team, and you know, that was your downfall. We should have let you do it. As if we want to see a bunch of white boys playing football and basketball anymore. These people only let black people participate if it serves their purpose and their financial interest. White folk need to understand black people are not your adversary. We're not your enemy. It's your own misguided ideas and naivete and ignorance that's your own enemy. Because you got these rich white folk having you believe that we're your enemy. We never were. Never have been. And it wasn't until they convinced your whiteness makes you have something in common with the elite white people that you start falling for. So stop being stupid and you'll do better. But nevertheless, here's the lesson. When you build your house on resentment, it has no foundation. See, lies animate a crowd, but they can't sustain a movement like that. Extremist rhetoric creates a culture of perpetual hostility that eventually becomes uncontrollable. See, you can train people to see enemies everywhere, and then you expect them to stop short of turning their hostility on you. The same climate Kirk and these other extremists help cultivate, the suspicion, the anger, the appetite for violence, that eventually reached back and claimed them. And so for Black America, the strategic insight is clear. Truth outlasts propaganda. Hate cannot sustain itself indefinitely. because it produces no solutions and no progress and no vision beyond destruction. And that's why every generation of white supremacists or hate-driven movement has eventually collapsed. While our struggle for justice, whether we're battered or torn or whatever, it continues. And so whether we talk from Jim Crow to civil rights, okay, our fight has endured precisely because it's rooted in dignity and not domination, because it's rooted in building and not burning. And the deeper lesson is that we can't afford to underestimate these movements while they're alive. Keep that in mind. But see, they can still cause great harm, and in the short term, especially. But history teaches us that you know, they won't last, because nothing built on lies ever does. Not relationships, not political movements, none of that. And our responsibility is to endure. Our responsibility is to continue organizing and keep telling the truth and keep building our unity and keep building our futures, a future rooted in justice. Because while hate, it consumes itself, but justice, it regenerates. Charlie Kirk discovered that lesson in the hardest way possible. He was literally swallowed by the very extremism he helped normalize. And Charlie Kirk, like so many people before him, built a raging fire, if you will, a fire filled with resentment and division. And he fed it endlessly. He's stoking it higher and higher until the flames he thought he controlled eventually turned back and consumed him. That's what that young white boy that unalived him represents. You see? That was his target audience. And so for us black folks, the takeaway is not to gloat and not to wish the angel of death come visit anyone. That's not what we do. We are not that people. We are wonderful, loving, understanding people, and we've seen so much pain. That is not what we do. We are not gloating, but we do recognize the inevitability of what happens when you choose division over dignity. Black America is watching, and we're reminded once again that survival and progress are secured not through hate, but through resilience and truth and solidarity. Now check this out. There's an economy behind this. There's financial incentive in the outrage economy. So from a business standpoint, and let me know if you guys are getting bored, because I can go on about this subject because I think it's important. Let me know if you're bored, but I think it's important. I won't have you here too much longer. But I think this is important, and I'm gonna hit this one time and I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna get back to my black business. I like to mind my black business. But if you're still with me, hit the #1 button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, even if you don't like me. There's something in here for you, especially you white folks who are listening, you folk who expect us to be empathetic for a man who said he doesn't like empathy. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We talk about these things. But hit the #1 button if you're still with me. I need to know. Now, again, let's talk about this rage economy. See, Charlie Kirk's death represents more than the loss of one man. It symbolizes the collapse of an outrage economy that he helped perfect. His entire career was built on monetizing white rage, weaponizing racial division, and turning black trauma into a product for consumption for white folk who were eager to consume it. Every speech, every viral clip, every debate on college campus was engineered to provoke, to inflame, and to get people riled up enough to share and donate and keep coming back. But here's the problem. With that model, outrage is addictive. And like any addiction, it requires constant escalation to keep the audience engaged. And what was shocking yesterday right? It's boring today, which means tomorrow you need to push a little further. And the bar keeps moving, and the rhetoric keeps intensifying, and the space for reasoned debate disappears. The cycle demands bigger enemies and more outrageous claims and sharper attacks until eventually you cross a line that can't be uncrossed. And Kirk, like so many others before him and who will come after him, have crossed it, not just politically, but existentially. This is why outrage-based business models are inherently unsustainable. They might generate short-term attention and fame or even wealth, but they can't build longevity. You can't build a stable brand, much less a safe society for us to live in, on perpetual provocation, because you have to constantly escalate the rhetoric, and at some point the audience becomes desensitized and the rhetoric becomes more toxic and the entire system collapses under its own weight. Shout out to Dennis Byron. And so Kirk's death is the ultimate cautionary tale of what happens when you turn outrage into a business plan. He fed the fire until the fire consumed him. And while his life is ended, and the ecosystem he helped create is still churning, and it's going to be pulling in new voices. It's going to be pulling in young white boys and black people too, who are desperate for cash, and on the same model of fear and division they're gonna operate. But the truth remains: outrage may enrich a few folk temporarily, but it destroys communities. It destroys nations. It corrodes institutions, and eventually it eats its own. And so for Black America, the lesson is clear. Our trauma has always been commodified, turning it into entertainment. Whether we're talking about rap songs or the blues or R&B, they've always turned our trauma into entertainment. Or they weaponize it as a political talking point that you see a lot of liberals do. They weaponize our trauma and get more stuff for themselves and more power and get elected. But again, that outrage economy never lasts. What endures is slow, steady, deliberate work of building truth, building justice, building solidarity. That's where the future lies. Not feeding racist fires and bigotry, but actually creating foundations. And so death of this man, Charlie Kirk, it creates a noticeable vacuum. I wanted you to understand that. And irrespective of what I say, shout out to Jeremy Gardner, there's a vacuum in what will be considered the conservative politics. It's the same thing that happened with Kevin Samuels. Kevin died, and you got all these people out here just saying all sorts of crazy stuff, and they're just rage baiting folk, keeping the division going. But nevertheless, Charlie Kirk, for years, he positioned himself as a youthful face of the conservative movement, a culture warrior who spoke directly to college students. He weaponized social media. He turned young people's grievances into a brand. And with him gone, the question becomes, who will step in and fill the role, and what direction will they take? Well, look, it's going to get worse. Nevertheless, we have to ask ourselves, will the next figure double down on Kirk's divisive approach, pushing even harder on the rhetoric of victimhood and resentment? Or will someone recognize the dangers of extremism and attempt to course correct? The early signs aren't encouraging. You heard those people on the video say, white man fight back. You heard the other young white man saying things like, it's gonna get worse. These kids are racist, as if they just made it up on their own. One thing you need to notice is almost immediately upon his passing, before they even know who did it or why, you heard these conservative voices begin framing Charlie Kirk not as a cautionary tale of what happens when hate-driven politics spiral out of control, but they start couching him in the terms of a martyr or a casualty of a very serious, long-lasting culture war. Kirk's death creates a vacuum in these conservative politics. And the troubling reality that many people believe is that this vacuum won't be filled by some sort of moderate. It'll be filled by voices even more extreme than his. When we got rid of Saddam Hussein in Iran, look what it filled up with. All these Islamic extremists. They took over. That's what happens. Usually, when you leave a void, something worse shows up. So you can anticipate that what's coming next is going to be some openly radical white nationalists and racists. They're going to step forward. But here's the paradox. The brilliance of white supremacy as a system has always been its ability to operate on two levels at once. Listen to me, you're going to learn something. White supremacy is both omnipresent, which means everywhere, and covert, which means hidden. At the same time, it survives because it hides in plain sight. It's cloaked in policies and cultural norms and coded language and microaggressions and denial rhetoric. The system works best when its operation can be explained away, when its violence can be minimized, when its beneficiaries can claim innocence. And see, the danger for white supremacists comes when it becomes too overt. Okay? When the mask slips and the hatred becomes too obvious to deny, at that point, that plausible deniability is gone. And the eyes of the world turn sharply toward those who perpetuate it. And in a globally connected age, where white people make up only 7% of the world's population, visibility is a liability. If overt white supremacy surges, then the backlash is not going to be delayed by decades of hidden atrocities or by history written only by those who win the battles. The backslash is going to be immediate. And in a world where social media has collapsed the barriers of distance and time and even language barriers, the world can now witness events real time. You see? So white nations can't no longer write the first and final draft of history without it being scrutinized and challenged and documented by people, the black and brown people around the world. And that matters because white nations are already fractured. You got Ukraine and Russia fighting it out right now. It's been going on almost 2 years. They're facing decline in birth rates, economic competition, okay, over conflicts and dwindling resources. They're not the unchallenged empires of the 1500s, able to expand across continents while controlling the narrative. Everybody can see you. We have Facebook Live and Instagram. Today's world is interconnected. So overtly supremacist behaviors, that invites resistance and exposes weaknesses. If pushed into violent confrontation, a small minority population, that's white folk, 7%, you're facing the collective judgment and the opposition of the rest of the world. You positioning yourself to lose. You can't win that battle. You think you can. And that's arrogance of white supremacy. It's not going to work. And this is the irony of the moment. The more extreme voices that step into Kirk's void, the more visible and undeniable white supremacy becomes. The very system built for survival begins to self-destruct when it's stripped of its cover. It's a slimy snail that once you expose it to the light, it gets dried out. It loses its power. So instead of protecting white power, extremism actually hastens its decline. And for that reason, the real lesson white people must confront is this: domination is no longer sustainable. And I'm talking to the white people right now. The system of white supremacy is failing, not only because of the harm it inflicts on others, but because it is beginning to destroy its own foundations. The path forward is not for you white folk to deep entrench yourself in these norms of white supremacy, but reintegration into a shared humanity of the world. Okay? You white folks are gonna have to learn to cooperate. You're gonna have to learn to share resources and knowledge and be part of the human family rather than its self-appointed rulers. This is the reality of the 21st century. You're not gonna be able to get on some spaceship and fly off. They found a planet, shout out to Lisa H. They found a planet that's 400 years away. You got white folks saying, we're gonna build a spaceship 39 miles long and we're gonna hop on this what is it, Alpha Tauri, something they call it Alpha Day. We're gonna build this spaceship that's 39 miles long and we're gonna hop in it and we're gonna stay in it for 400 years and we're gonna get away from y'all. These white folks are trying to leave us. They're trying to hop on a ship and leave us and head for another planet. Oh man. But that's the reality, you know. You see? Oh, look, black folks, we got a little appetite, you know, for all of this. Okay. All right. And white folks, instead of reckoning with Charlie Kirk's rhetoric, they try to normalize his hostility and violence and his death. They're trying to use it to further radicalize the base, to entrench the idea that conservatives are under siege and to justify even more extreme positions. And so once again, Black America is watching a familiar script play out. Rather than acknowledging the destructive consequences of weaponizing division, the conservative machine, and really it's the right wing of the conservative machine, is posed to try to turn this man into a saint and sanctify his legacy and keep feeding the same fire that consumed him. And for us, that speaks volumes, not just about Kirk, but about the broader unwillingness of this movement he represented to learn from this tragedy. Look, man, where does this leave us as Black people? Black America is doing what we've always done, and that's practicing complicated truth-telling in the face of pressure to simplify. We are capable of holding multiple truths at the same time, even when those truths seem to pull us in opposite directions. We can acknowledge that Charlie Kirk's death was wrong. No one should lose their life to political violence, okay? And in this particular case, is political gang violence. And that is the truth. And we state that clearly without hesitation. But we can also refuse to sanitize this man's legacy. His words, his actions, and his influence inflicted real harm on real people. And he spent years telling us our victories weren't earned and our rights weren't necessary and our very presence was illegitimate. And remembering that is not disrespect, it's honesty, okay? We all can mourn the loss of human life, especially a young life like his. And we can recognize the grief of his family, okay? But at the same time, we can remember the grief he sowed in ours and the dignity stripped from our professionals who are dismissed as some kind of DEI hires, and the students made to feel like they're imposters in classrooms, and the activists framed as radicals for demanding justice. Mourning his death does not require forgetting the pain his life work caused. We can condemn violence while also refusing to erase history. And too often, Black people are told to forgive and forget and just move on from those who harmed us. But true maturity, true integrity means holding on to the whole picture. It means saying both his death was tragic and his rhetoric was destructive. This is the balance Black America walks daily. Complexity is It's not confusion. Nuance isn't weakness. Refusing to flatten reality into a single narrative isn't contradiction, it's wisdom. And in this moment, that wisdom tells us we can grieve if we so choose without glorifying. Shout out to Dennis Byron. And we also can condemn without erasing, and we can mourn without rewriting the truth. What we won't do is engage revisionist history. We won't pretend Charlie Kirk was something he wasn't. We won't allow his death to be turned into a halo or his life's work into something noble, when in fact it was hostile to our dignity as Black people. His death doesn't erase his record. It doesn't erase our memory. We also won't allow his passing to silence criticism of his legacy and those like him. Too often, Black Americans have been told that when those who harmed us die, we just got to let it go, as if death itself washes away the damage they caused. We're pressured to forgive. When you have these right-wing racists come into churches and shoot up Black people in stores and whatnot, we just ask to forgive. Shout out to Flowers Galore. We just move on. Before we can even bury our loved ones, we ask to forget about it, to forgive them and move on. Before we even know his or her identity even, or the reasons why. Some of these people didn't even ask for forgiveness, and we're asked to forgive them and move on, even while the consequences of their words and actions continue to shape our daily lives. The climate that Charlie Kirk set is the reason why you have multiple historically Black colleges all across America under lockdown. And we just supposed to move on? That sort of expectation is not healing, it's erasure. True healing requires honest accountability. It means naming the harm, remembering the impact, and refusing to rewrite history for the comfort of others. It means rejecting the narrative that we should bury the truth alongside the man. Real unity can't be built on dishonesty, and real progress can't come from sweeping the past under the rug. So let's be clear. Mourning a death does not mean whitewashing a life. We can hold space for grief without surrendering our commitment to truth. And the truth is, Charlie Kirk's legacy is what it is. And no amount of revisionism will make it otherwise. Now, I want to take the opportunity, before I forget, to thank everybody and give shouts out to everybody who contributed to the Super Chat and the Cash App and the PayPal. We got 35. I appreciate that. If you guys could give me another 5, I appreciate it. If you learned something, don't give me anything if you hadn't learned anything. You don't learn something, don't pay me a dime. I need to work harder. But if you have learned something, as I always say to my audience, if you learn something, I should earn something. And I'm not finished. I got some more to say. But I want to take the opportunity to thank all the folk who contributed to the Super Chat. Shout out to Frozen06. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate that. Dre Harden. Dennis finna cook this thing a couple of days. Thank you so much, brother. He said, I barbecue over here. But good looking out. Thank you so much. Also, Dre Harden said, habitual line stepper. Good looking out, brother. Thank you. Who else we got? Gloria Skittles. Thank you for the Super Chat. Let me get this out the way. I appreciate you sincerely. Who else we have here? We got Dre Harden once again. And also shout out to Mr. Adams. Thank you so much for the Cash App. Dre Harden said, this is why I watched it. It's not for the dating stuff. That man is tough when it gets into the law and history bag. I love history. Thank you so much, family. We got 36 Super Chats. We can get to 40. That'll be sporty. My man Dre Harden also said, Dennis and his ancestors wouldn't be loyal. Exactly right. If Charlie Kirk had his way with Civil Rights Act, that's exactly right. Miss Mimi Amani Faye, Uncle D speaking. Thank you so much, baby. I appreciate you. Dre Harden with history books. Dennis is a menace. I'm almost in tears thinking about those stacks of catalogs Randy used to keep under the coffee table. Yeah, Sears Roebuck. You guys need to learn about that, man. That was real cool. The way our people got around the in-face disrespect and racism by using Sears. Shout out Johnny Harris. Teach, brother. I will. Rare Room Entertainment, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Also, Johnny Harris. Malcolm said the chickens come home to roost. Thank you so much. We got 38 super chats. Let's try to get to 40. Alonzo Dunn, good looking out. Thank you so much. Flowers galore. My mom and dad know what it's like before civil rights. Yes, they do. This is not long past history. This is recent history for many of us. Y'all kids learning. Thank you, baby. I appreciate you. I exposed was MAGA on MAGA crime. Oh, wow. Right. That's exactly what it is. White on white crime. And again, I came with the title, Charlie Kirk's victim of white gang violence leaves black colleges threatened. And my question is why? Okay. And I'll answer that when I finish with this. Shout out to, I can't say this name. I think it's Greek. But either way, the brutality and savagery imposed on blacks after lynchings was common practice among other Europeans. They perfected lynchings and barbaric slavery, including cannibalism among themselves. Yeah, it's like, man, when you really start looking at history, the doggone Yazis, and I use the term, the Yazis got their racism for us. During the trials in Nuremberg, the Yazis kept bringing up court cases where they cited the American Supreme Court when they said that they don't have to, they can do sterilization, which is still good law, crazy, right? They can sterilize undesirables. And the Yazis at the Nuremberg trial continued to cite the American Supreme Court for some of the stuff they did to the Jewish people. That's what's crazy. Insane. Okay, but nevertheless, shout out to PB Army. All of them Pinky and No More Brain. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Sonny said 99 cents super, 99 super. We got 39. Let's see if we can get to 40. 40 super stickers would be great. I hope it's not too late. Dharma Warrior, why are my comments not showing up? Was I banned? If so, I don't know why. I haven't done anything wrong. Can you unban me then? I didn't know you were banned. I don't know if anybody's banned. I've just been talking. Torrin John, Nick Fuentes is a Mexican, but he is something else. That little dude is something else. All right, we got 40 super chats. Let's see if we can get to 45. Mastodon, if you learn something. If you didn't learn something, don't give me anything. But if you have learned something, I appreciate it. I try to do my very best to put things in context. I try to give you some law. I try to give you some history so you can have a better understanding of the world that we live in and the societies that we live in. So, if you learn something, I should earn something. But nevertheless, let's continue. Mastodon, how we gonna live? Ride, the lady crying. Who else we got? We live in a world where we can't even have an intellectual conversation with each other. Our feelings will resort to violence, and that's unfortunate. That is very, because during learned debate, you can convince people to change. Even the most ardent adversaries can have discussions. Remember what Brother Malcolm did. He would go places like Harvard with these well-trained. Brother Malcolm, under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, would go to some of these elite colleges and out-debate the professors with logic and reason and facts. So, this is what we do. This is how we change hearts. Not with bullets and not with violence. That doesn't do anything. Violence only begets violence. And of course, there's always a time when you defend yourself, but not in political theater. You go there, you debate them, and you give them that intellectual competition and pushback that forces people to change. That's how we deal with that in a civilized society, not by the sword or the rifle, period. And that's my response to that. But one thing for sure is that his post-election has shown us FBAs are true enemies. Discernment and delineation are essential for us going forward. It feels so spiritual. FBAs are we all we got. God bless. Yeah, and I understand, brother, and I really hope that this tongue lashing that we are giving the Caribbeans and the Africans will help them come along and realize that, we are better together. Okay. And at some point we'll have those conversations. But in the meantime, we have to continue making sure we foster respect. And unfortunately, foundational Black Americans have suffered a lot of disrespect and one-sided unity, And we need to deal with that. As Nick Fuentes proved, I hope they realize just what the typical white man thinks about them as they attempt to cajole them and perform in these sycophantic manners when dealing with them, and then also at the same time disrespecting us. But thank you so much. Drew Titan LLC, grieve his death while ignoring his life work. Perfect explanation. Thank you so much. Animal Advocate, thank you. So we got 41 super chats. If we get 4 more, that'll be 45. Y'all can get me there. That'll be great, but only if you learn something. If you didn't learn anything, you don't owe me anything. Wrench Turner, on the wood. Thank you so much, family. Always good to see you in here. Who else we got? Cody Marsh, salute to you. It's been a while. It has been, man. This is a daytime show. I'm up in here, baby. Nighttime for some people. Dennis Byron, I'm listening, King. Keep teaching. Thank you so much, family. I appreciate you. Jeremy Garner, if you learn something, the Ice Man should earn something. Yeah, baby. You got rhymes, man. Well, anyway, let's get on to Jeremy Garner. If you learn something, the Ice Man should earn something. Thank you so much. I read that twice because it's twice as nice. All right. Lisa H., thank you for the $10 super sticker. Dennis Byron, thank you again. His death was wrong, but his message teachings were wrong also. That's how folk feel. And you can't knock people for how they feel. You can say what you want to say, but you can't be mad at people for how they feel. All right. And that's the impression that he left. Flowers galore. Thank you for the $5 super sticker. And let me see here. She says, let me read that. She said, I really could listen to your lectures all day. Thank you so much, baby. I appreciate that. Too tall. It's right on, brother. That's what I'm talking about. April loves my 215, says, definitely learned something. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the compliment. Also, I want to give a big shout out to Miss Johnson. Thank you so much for the Cash App. And who else we got in here? Cody Marshall, I'm glad you're telling the truth, Uncle D. I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna sit up here and play these games. I see these people on the internet. Y'all, I mean, you got Dr. Umar Johnson. I mean, bro, we ain't heard from you in a minute. I don't understand that, and this is why I always look at the so-called people who say, and I'm pro-black, that as soon as they get a chance to try to curry some favor with massa, they run right up on them and start doing the staunch so-called black powerites. Always running. It just lets me know who we're dealing with. Thank you so much, Lisa H. And also Guinea Gee. All right, appreciate everybody. So that is 41 super chats. Maybe I'll get a few more as we close this thing out. But I want to make sure, I want to always try to make sure I acknowledge the real MVPs who contribute to the super chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. I hope you all learned something, whether you learned something or not, or contributed to the super chat or not. I think all of y'all learned something. I think you did. Okay. Nevertheless, let's finish this thing out so you all can be released to go hang out with your family. And again, thank everybody for everything you've done for me. And I appreciate your patience and your love, and your continually coming back here. A lot of people come to me all the time, and you guys look forward to my conversations, because unlike so many others, I'm not compromised. I work for myself, and I'm too old to care anymore. You see, so I'm going to tell you the truth, and that's why they call me the Blizzard King, because I deliver the cold, hard truth, whether you like it or not. Okay? And I'm not going to hold back. Nevertheless, Charlie Kirk's death, this young man, is both a tragedy, but it's also a lesson. The tragedy, again, is obvious. He's young. Life cut short. Family left grieving. Beautiful kids, beautiful wife. The future never realized, but the lesson is just as important. His life's work inflicted harm on Black America. And I could expand it out and say he inflicted harm on lots of other people in America. I think the most harm he inflicted was on white folks, because he helped continue the brainwashing that have them trapped in the belief that they're superior to everybody else and they're more deserving than everybody else. And that's the problem too. But back to black folks, okay? His death underscores the dangers of the rhetoric he spread for years. Shout out to T.D. Harden. For years in this young man's life, he used his platform to delegitimize black progress and to paint our victories as frauds and to frame our very presence as a threat in a country that we built when it was nothing. And that rhetoric, it didn't exist in a vacuum. It created a culture of hostility and suspicion that shaped the minds of people that you share classrooms with and business offices and the entire community. And now the very climate he helped normalize has claimed him as a victim. There's a bitter irony. Shout out to Shaw W. And I want y'all to listen to this very carefully. Hear me. Listen. The irony in the fact that Charlie Kirk's last words were gang violence. Before he was shot in his chest, and that bullet, if you look at it, it ricocheted up and hit him in the throat. So that he had armor on, he had protective Kevlar on his chest. And the boy that shot him, a 22-year-old white male, he actually missed. He hit him in the Kevlar. It bounced up. Shout out to Fiotis. It bounced up and hit him in the neck. That bullet was supposed to ricochet. It could have went anywhere, but it bounced up. Instead of going somewhere else, it hit him in the neck and tore through all of his artists. A lot of stuff there. College age, young white man, that's his target audience. Last words were gang violence. For years, Kirk used his platform to harp on gang violence in the black community, presenting it as a moral failure unique to us, as if dysfunction and violence only existed in our neighborhoods. But let's be clear. When Kirk said gang violence, we all know what he meant. We all know who he was talking about, don't we? He was talking about black people. He was specifically talking about black Americans. And that's what makes this moment so revealing. Listen to me. It shows that even at the very end, Charlie Kirk's obsession wasn't with the complexities of violence in America as a whole. It was with projecting violence on the black America. His last words make it clear. In his mind, our community was the problem. He could never stop pointing to it, even as the violence he helped normalize was closing in on him. So what does that tell us? It tells us that in his final moments, before his life was taken, the last thought on Charlie Kirk's mind was black people. It was us. Even as he sat in that chair on that college campus, surrounded by his own supporters who were cheering him on, his fixation was still on criminalizing and condemning black life in America. His rhetoric returned to him the same way, pointing to black pain as a way of highlighting America's supposed moral collapse. The tragedy and the irony is that while he spoke about gang violence, he himself was moments away from becoming a victim of it. Not in the form he used to condemn, street gang violence. No, his death was instead the effect of political gang violence. One ideological faction striking down the leader of another. And yet, his own framing never made room for that truth because of him. Gang violence, shout out to Terrence Sinclair, for him, gang violence only ever had one face. That's the black face. Yet he was killed by an enemy from the opposite side by his own framework. And that too, in my opinion, is gang violence. The gangs in this case are not neighborhood crews, but political factions or some sect of a political faction. The boy that killed him might be a Republican. But just like Crips kill Crips and vice lords, the same thing, and people in mafia families in the same family, yeah, sometimes people in your own faction will unalive you. Again, in this particular case, the gangs in this case are not neighborhood crews, but political factions, tribes organized around ideology instead of geography, but still bound together by loyalty and rhetoric and hostility, at least for the other side. And Kirk spent years condemning black communities for violence without seeing that America itself has been transformed into rival gangs. Red against blue, conservative against liberal, far right-wing conservative against moderate conservatives, Republicans against rhinos, liberals against Democrats. In the end, he was claimed by that same reality. And now his wife and the children are left behind, a young woman, still in her 20s, suddenly a single mother, something he preached against and condemned. His 2 children are now going to be raised in what society calls a broken home, a home without a father. Something else that he also preached about as something that ails the black community. Matter of fact, Kirk argued that that fatherless homes was the greatest crisis in the black community. And yet through his own actions and his own rhetoric, he has left his family in the very position he condemned ours for being in. His wife, though she may have community support, she's still going to have to live with the weight of his legacy and the legacy of hatred he put out into the world and the scars that legacy leaves behind. And this is not unique to Charlie Kirk. It's the story of many men who, through their own choices and words, abandon their women and children, not always physically by walking out, but emotionally or spiritually by creating a world that collapses around them. The result is the same. Women are left carrying burdens alone, and children grow up with the ache of absence of a father. My Bible, something I read, my Bible. Shout out to Shockwave Truth. My Bible tells me that the power of life and death is in the tongue. For you all who are disagreeing with me, that's in Proverbs 18 and 21. Words, family, are not just sounds. And I'm talking to everybody. I'm talking to the whole human family. I'm talking to you white folks, black folks, brown folks. I'm talking to pickaninnies. I'm talking to dwarves, tall people, short people, I'm talking to all of y'all. Words are not just sounds. They're seeds. They're weapons. They're tools that shape reality. God himself, the God of Abraham, created the heavens and the earth with words. And the God said, let there be light. And there was light. And then I want you to think about this. If God spoke the universe into existence, then we, made in his image, also carry the ability to speak words or speak our worlds into being. The words you choose define the universe you live in. If you always talk about depression and sadness and how you don't have any money and can't find somebody that cares about you, that's the universe that you're going to exist in. You literally call those spirits to you. You call that energy to you. So we have to ask ourselves, did Charlie Kirk speak peace? Because we know he didn't speak empathy. Did he speak love? Because we know he spoke division. Did he speak unity? because we know he spoke suspicion, resentment, and condemnation. Those are the words he released into the atmosphere. Those were the words that shaped his universe. He created a world where hostility was normalized, where enemies were everywhere, where compassion was weakness, and empathy was a made-up term that, for the modern man, which actually was something that was bad for us. And that's the very universe that eventually closed in on him. Talk to me, family. And this is why we must never underestimate the power of words. They can heal, or they can destroy, they can uplift, or they can condemn, they can create life, or they can invite death. Kirk's tragedy is a reminder that you cannot continually speak violence, disdain, and division without eventually living in the consequences of those very words. You will reap what you sow. Shout out to Shockwave. He did not plant peace. And so peace did not grow in his world. He planted division, and division consumed him. For Black America, the lesson is clear. We must continue to speak life, to speak dignity, to speak truth, even when the world dismisses us. And I'm not saying bad things don't happen to good people, but I am saying that the universe you create with your own words is the universe your children will inherit. That's not just psychology, that's scripture. That's God's law. And the question is whether America is mature enough to confront that truth, or whether we're going to keep going down this path that we're on, creating division amongst each other, moving in a cycle of outrage, forgetting the lessons of our past and refusing accountability. I'm talking to every American who's listening to me right now. If we are serious about building a safer, more just society, we can't afford to treat this just like another headline. We must ask hard questions about the cost of weaponizing divisions and whether we will finally break that cycle. America sees the lesson clearly. We've seen it time and time again. Division always consumes everyone in its path, including those who spark it. The real choice before us is simple, but it's profound. Will we build movements rooted in hope, inclusion, and shared humanity? Or will we cling to these movements built on fear and resentment and domination? Charlie Kirk chose division, and in the end, it consumed him. That doesn't make his death right, but it does make it instructive. His story should remind us that hate cannot sustain itself, that outrage is not a strategy, and that no one is immune from the fire they help ignite. And let this be the closing reminder. Shout out to TX Pro. Listen to me. Complexity is not confusion. Nuance is not weakness, and holding multiple truths is not a contradiction, it's wisdom. Black America has long carried that wisdom. We have a long history of balancing grief with memory, compassion with accountability, and mourning with honesty. And the hope is that the rest of the nation can finally learn the same. This is Uncle D. I love you all. And as I always say, at this time, I'm out.
Dennis Spurling.
In the city where the lights don't sleep, Uncle D got the vibe so deep. Representing men strong and free. Dennis Spurling's the king of the spree. In the streets where the rhythm flows, black men rising, that's how it goes. Uncle D got the truth to show. In his heart, that's where the fire glows. the stream. Dennis Spurling, wisdom gleam. Voices whisper truth and insight. In his podcast, feel the light. Harmony in every word. Truth and laughter you've heard. Wave after wave of smooth delight. Dennis brings the dark to light. Share the tales unfold. Stories born like morning gold. Feeling the wisdom is subscribing like time after time.
Black men, and I want to salute you. The incarceration rate is down. The education rate is up. We up. We went from, we are doing great for ourselves. So you should salute yourself. Shout out to all the brothers out there, whether you're a truck driver or engineer, whether you're an electrician or garbage man, a doctor, a lawyer, if you're a hard-working brother, if you fresh out the penitentiary, but you on your grind and you doing it legal and you trying to make amends for yourself, man, I salute you too, brothers. God bless you. This is Uncle D, and you know, I'm out.